Welcome to Movie of the Year, the only podcast that's the screaming and the screaming to unequivocally figure out what the best movie is of any given year. Before I introduce this week's panelists, know this, that this show is also a game, in which points are awarded for well-made arguments, cogent thoughts about the film, jokes, and anything else I feel like awarding. The winner will be my best friend for a week and not die. How do you turn this off? No, I'm going into Beetlejuice.
I'm your host for the evening, Mike Gravano, and I'm so happy to discuss my canonically favorite film of all time, 1996's Scream, because we, of course, are going through 1996 all season long. And with me are the guys I like to think of as my Randy and Randy. First up, it's Ryan.
To say that I am not a stew is both in equal parts the greatest compliment and biggest insult you have ever given me in my entire life.
That's why I said what I said.
Thank you
Plus,
for having me, Mike.
We've never not watched a movie that you don't talk over it annoyingly and tell me what good part is coming up and what the rules for the movie are. Real cool, bud.
Thank you.
And my other Randy, the Randy on my other shoulder, it's Greg.
I'm Greg, and I'm here to talk about a scary movie, which, as everybody knows, is my favorite thing to do.
Yes.
What you didn't know is probably the original title of this movie was Jaws.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I learned something. Hopefully that will come up later, and I'll remember that, and I'll be able to ring in and say
If we do trivia tonight, you get that one right.
You may have given up a little something.
You Venmo me $1,000 if that happens.
With us tonight is a very special guest that longtime listeners from last season will recognize. You know him from the Marvel Movie Minute, and you know him from the next reel. He's who I like to think is my Skeet. It's Pete.
Oh
Pete
my
Ulrich.
God, it's my piercing blue eyes, isn't it? It's blue eyes, right? Oh, I'm so glad to be back, you guys. Thank you so much. I would like nothing more than to just be here on this podcast or in a good porno.
A good
okay.
porno.
Well, I mean, you know what they say, Pete. Everyone deserves a second chance. So,
Right. I have to say, I did listen. I've been listening to your shows, and I realized that my co-host, Andy Nelson, who was also on the show last season, in your part one of your finale for last year, you said that he would be shot in the face and that I would win something. And also, wait, I wrote this down. If you have puffy nipples, pierce them up. So those are two notes that I made from your finale shows, which by now I can only assume as podcasters you've forgotten. Thank you for having me back.
No, that all tracks. I don't remember saying it, but I believe it.
You could say it. You could tell me any one of us said that. If you got it.
All I can say is you were all on board. You were all on board.
my guess, not remembering that at all, is that not only did all three of us say it at the same time, but we harmonized.
Did the Boys to Men just hop on here to say those things? Let's get into it the way we always do, gentlemen. Talking about our history. Pete, starting with you. Scream. What's it mean to you?
Oh my gosh. Scream was I was not really much of a horror person, and so I went to Scream without a solid canonical understanding of tropes. And so when I saw Scream in the theater, I was right surprised almost around every fucking corner. The whole thing, every trope. And so since then I have grown my vocabulary, and this movie holds such an enormously special place in my movie heart. I adore this movie. I think it does so much so well, and that it does it and has it's got some meaning to it on the other side is a real gift. So you know what happened to Skeet Ulrich? I don't know, but
He's Jughead's dad.
I'm here for it.
Yeah, he joined a biker gang and went down the bad path.
I mean, didn't we all see that coming?
I think. Look at his hair,
Yeah,
Greg.
right.
It's built-in greasy. Greg, you are not a horror fan.
I am not a horror
as we all
fan.
know. But I do think even before this week, you hadn't just read the Wikipedia for this film. Is that accurate?
Let me take you all the way back to the year 1996. My family was moving to Arizona, and I was like, I did what every young high schooler moving from one place to another would do. I'm like, new place, new Greg. Maybe this Greg watches horror movies. And I had a crush on literally every single actress in this movie, and so I was like, let's do it. And I did not find the movie that scary, but we were in our new house when I watched it, and a roach crawled on me. And that scared the shit out of me, and I'm still weirded out by roaches. So I'd say the movie made a real impression on me.
Do you guys remember our Temple of Doom episode with
Yes.
Mindy Clark and CG? And there was somebody, I think Mindy's husband, her stepdad, that would just throw roaches at them when they were showering.
Yeah, that was like
God.
a prank.
Yeah.
That was a prank that he did.
Yeah, that's scary.
That was a very traumatizing story for me, as you might imagine.
Well, we
not
didn't
a
even
cool
know about
prank.
your roach past.
But
Yeah.
I will say this. I'm just like Pete. This movie, the first time I watched it, surprised me basically constantly. Like I never saw any of it coming. And that you cannot recapture watching it again. But there is a definite like extra level of enjoyment watching this movie, knowing everything that's going on. Because I think it does skillfully capture, like the first time you watch it, it feels a certain way. And every time after that, it feels a new way. And I think that's really pretty cool.
Right, guy?
Oh, where to begin? Yeah, a lot like Pete, I was not going to a lot of horror movies. I was not watching a lot of horror movies, but it's sort of like remembering that time when this movie was in the theater, like nobody was. Like it was such a niche genre at that point. Like the 80s were over, and there were some people who would like still rent them probably, but like the ones that came out in theaters were so small. There was
And so bad.
So bad, yeah.
Yeah.
And there was no, like they were not hiring auteurs to make these movies, and they were just not hitting the mainstream. Nobody was ever talking about this. And this movie coming out it did this thing that is rare. Like it's really like Titanic and very few movies of making more money in the second weekend, making more money in the third weekend, and then just continuing that. Like it was a huge thing that probably brought horror to the mainstream and hasn't left.
Greg's of the day watched it.
I mean,
Greg's around the globe.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I saw it, I walked past the poster and it said, I watched it, Greg.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh,
Yeah. Except for the roach part. Pretty good.
I got to see this. We didn't have this this terminology at the time, but it is clearly a think piece for think pieces to be written about the think piece. And the reason I'm so excited about tonight is that I never have heard or read any of those. I've like it happened and it was such a big deal, but to now come back, 30 years later and have this conversation with you guys about this movie that I think fits in there with like, Clueless and a very few movies of my childhood that go so far and above like their genre. And it's not just because it's meta, but the meta helps. And I think that's so very clear is that this is a fantastic movie that also speaks on its genre, but that's not the only thing it does. And I think that's the lesson that so many movies after this missed.
Yes, including movies in the Scream franchise. As the listeners may know, this is my favorite movie canonically, and I saw it too young because I saw a lot of horror too young, and then it changed me forever. And I still stand behind 1, 2, and now 6. I can watch all of them. They're all just comfort food, but the others are so bad. But I think what the other ones do is like, oh, we should just be meta, right? Just be like, we're a movie the whole time, forgetting that, like, but be a good movie. Like, Scream was doing things that a movie does, not just saying, look how we're a movie. And
also, how fun that we just watched Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah.
Like, we just watched that movie and had a whole big show about it and talked about it and everything.
Did we finish that season with Amadeus and Nightmare? And then now we start this season with Larry Flint?
Yes!
Uh-huh.
Oh, my God!
84 and 96 are real echoey years of each
In
other.
Just in conversation.
Just
They're in conversation
That's
with
the
each
thing
other.
about
Yeah,
it.
they're in
like
conversation.
basically
Yeah.
talking to each other. Yeah.
But we're probably done, right? It's not like Tom Holce de Leche is going to show up in anything.
Oh, my goodness.
I don't think we kept Beautiful Girls in the Sweet 16. So yeah, that's probably true. Is he in that one? Nobody.
I don't think
Nobody
he's in
cares,
that
Ryan.
one.
Let me just say for people who don't know, that was a great bit. I listened to that episode. It was a great bit. I laughed. Well done.
They all
Good
are,
callback.
Pete. Yeah, there's a point for Pete.
That's why I'm
Before we
here,
even
is to
started the
tell you, is to
show.
remind you of your great bits of the past.
See, this is the
That's
problem.
a new segment we're doing. Pete reminds us of our great bits.
This is the problem of the old Tonight Show is that there was one Ed McMahon, but only one Johnny Carson. Here we have one Ed McMahon and three Johnny Carsons just getting AO'd up and down.
Well, AO, that's all the time we have. Why don't we just actually dive in? We're going to take the quick breaks, and when we come back, Scream! In the 90s, the slasher flick was running on fumes. Michael Myers stumbled and stabbed for 6 movies at this point. Jason killed campers across 9. And Freddy had 7 movies under his bitchin' belt, including the meta-horror movie dry run, New Nightmare. But even with low budgets, horror was losing money, and worse, respect. But then a young upstart who loved horror was inspired by a real serial killer to write a horror movie about loving horror movies. It was a post-Clerks world. Characters in movies love to talk about movies. Wes Craven said no several times before deciding, fine, I'll read the script and then invigorate horror again. And he did it with a young cast, an encyclopedic horror history, and a killer that was terrifying because they were so human. Ghostface trips, stumbles, and gets their ass kicked with every murder. The supernatural can only be scary for so long, but punk-ass douchebags will be scary forever. Scream was released in December against the normal holiday family fare and on a $15 million budget. And their gamble paid off. It went on to rake in $173 million worldwide and was one of the highest grossing films of the year. And then, of course, it went on to become one of the most successful horror franchises of all time. So, taste buds, I ask you this. Looking back, it's crazy that Wes Craven would direct this movie. It'd be like, I don't know, if Steven Spielberg thought it was a good idea to direct Ready Player One and potentially piss on everything he's ever created. It just wouldn't happen. So how necessary is Craven's veteran hand, or does the success of the movie come down to a very 90s cast, Calvin Williamson's little tee-hee-hees?
I think part of what is successful about this movie is something that Wes Craven's very good at, which is there's so much going on that the movie can hardly contain it.
Great.
And that when you come away at the end of the movie, you're not 100% sure everything that happened or exactly, the exact chain of events. And I find that super exciting. I think that there's a world in which this movie has no sequels that would kind of be even... I've become like this anti-sequel guy, but in part because it's like when the world seems bigger than the movie, there's always this feeling that like the movie is 3-dimensional or something that you could somehow see around a corner. And I think we could talk about some events in this movie. It's not clear necessarily. We probably have guesses about who did what murders between the two different killers. I think that there's like room to interpret like maybe there's even an additional killer in the movie. And there's like a ton of like different themes and elements in terms of like what is wrong with society. Is anything wrong with society? What's wrong with like fiction? Why are we drawn to all of these things? And I think that most movies strain to contain all those different elements in them at the same time. And I would venture to say most horror movies don't even attempt to like contain those kinds of multitudes. And Wes Craven just is not afraid to do that. He's not afraid to like not have everything sync up or make total sense, and to instead create a world that is so much bigger than the movie that you're actually watching.
But on the flip side, not arguing with that, that was incredibly well said and cogent. And for telling you that, I should probably get a point. I would say too that there are so many filmmakers that are like that are on the fringe. There's so many filmmakers that are spent the beginning of their career on the fringe of Hollywood and making genre movies that moved into the mainstream. So not just Wes Craven, but Sam Raimi, the Coens, all these people who like feel like that they love the wackiness and bring it all. Let's just put it all in. And really the reason that they're successful that nobody talks about, or the reason why others are unsuccessful, is because they have control. They know where their lines are. And there's so many ideas that are pitched on those movies. That there's so many Craven, Carpenter, Coen, Raimi ideas that have to be left on the curb because they're not going to let those in. And that's what it's impossible to say without watching, honestly, like 30 movies of this genre, how tight Scream is and how it doesn't let in any of those ideas that would pierce any of its other ideas. Like if there's something that like would have been funny or would have been scary, those are included in so many shittier horror movies by lesser filmmakers that are just not in Scream.
I think all of what Ryan just said is great, and most of what Greg just said is great. I didn't realize Greg and I was going to be my nemesis again quite so fast.
Yes, you did.
I think that I love the way you introduced this, Mike, because you make Wes Craven sound like the Dr. Seuss of horror directors. Like, we're putting this seasoned old man with a whole bunch of young people, and let's just see what happens. And I think that works so well because of two things. First, Craven does know all the rules, right? He invented many of the rules for modern horror, and he knows them inside and out, and he lets this cast shine with their youth and on-screen charisma in a way that absolutely holds up. Are their performances Oscar-worthy? No, but they're fantastic, and I'm engaged in every single one of them the whole time. My point for Greg is I actually don't think it's necessarily true that the movie is not tight at the end. I think that, by the end, I've seen the movie a number of times now, and I think there are little hidden lines that indicate who was where at any given time. Who did Stu kill? Well, we kind of get that. We get who started the whole thing off with Drew Barrymore. Like, I think we understand those things, and I did not understand those until I, really stopped to think about it honestly for podcasting.
Well, point of order: who's the killer? Who's the original killer, like, of Drew Barrymore and her boyfriend?
Stu.
I think it's both of them. I think they're both.
Yeah,
I think they're both there.
They do move
because they have to move bodies.
The killer says, "What door am I at?" There's two main doors to your house. I think the joke there is that they're at both doors.
Right.
So that's my point. Not that it's like not that it doesn't come together, but that we can sort of look at the events and still not totally be sure who is.
Well, I'll give you that, but I think that the interesting thing is that later, maybe this is the better question. Who had the motive to kill Casey and Steve? Right?
That's Stu.
Maybe they were both there, but it was orchestrated by Steve.
Yeah,
I mean Stu. Right? Because
that's like Stu's killing. They have different killings. Who is the benefit? Who benefits from it?
Yeah.
Who benefits from it?
I wonder if they argue or if they did a bracket of people in the city to see who kills who. And the main way
absolutely
that's how
did
we
a
would
bracket.
do it.
Right.
The main way you can always tell if Stu was the killer is if the ghost face pulls his hands in front of him and you can see spit fly out of his mouth as he talks.
I think that's the piece that I think is really interesting, that these guys it actually does tie up, I think, pretty well, and the fact that they're able to do that and keep me intrigued. It took me years to actually hear that conversation on the bench when they were talking about the fact that Casey broke up with Stu to go with Steve.
Mm-hmm.
Years.
Yeah. Also,
to catch that line.
It's kind of hacky to big sleep this, but is the movie so engaging that who gives a shit at the end? I don't care if it all works out. I don't care if even the authors knew. It's just I'm so wrapped up that I don't know when they plan to get the dad, and I don't care if the logic works.
Definitely.
As a kid, I remember very quickly realizing half these characters have the same black boots on and trying to map it out watching it.
Yeah.
And I do not think I picked as a ripe young fourth grader that it was these specific two, but I was just count the shoes.
This goes all the way to the top.
In the bathroom scene where Sydney's alone in the bathroom and we see the shoes drop one by one, was your first thought, oh, a nervous pooper, just like me?
Yeah. I also lift my feet because I don't want people to hear me pooping.
There's something so funny about the way the gown is then dropped down over the shoes. Also,
he didn't want it to drop in the toilet.
Exactly, right? Yeah. Also, good job, Sydney. She figures out exactly what to do in that situation. The running slide on the ground. Yeah. I'm dead in that situation, and she just
oh no! If you're in a horror scene or in a spaceship that has closing doors, drop and slide.
The drop and slide, yeah.
And then reach back for your hat. You realize you didn't have one.
Yeah.
Snap.
Lose your arm.
She's so in Craven's, and I don't know enough about his other movies, but she's definitely a successor to Nancy. This is a smart final girl. There's a reason she survives because she's
and doesn't watch the
got
movies.
The gumption.
And Billy.
Right.
Billy seemed to be one of the movie's many, but not perhaps most obvious references to Nightmare on Elm Street, right? Billy seems to be a re-instantiation of Johnny Depp.
I know, but I kept thinking it was crazy that he looks like
cast.
Johnny Depp, but you make like you're more douchey than Johnny Depp. That is so hard to do. And I'm not even talking about with the murdering, just him talking to her as a boyfriend. What a piece of shit.
He's a bad boyfriend before we find out he's a murderer.
See, that's the part of what's like so I don't kind of stunning about this movie is it's prescient. Like there was not like the idea in the culture of like gaslighting at the time. Yet that's what he's doing, right? And it's at first you think
my boyfriend said that I should be over my mom's death by now, so I guess
it's been a year.
Oh my god!
At first you think it's being a bad boyfriend, but then you figure out it's actually part of the sadism of his being a killer. And Wes Craven saying, "Yeah, those are the same thing." Like that's not a difference between those two ways of treating a woman. These are the same ways of treating a woman. And part of like this movie, he peered into the freaking future, dude. This is two boys planning to kill their friends and the people they know at school 3 years before Columbine. Like, I can't believe how much he saw like what was deeply sick about the culture and was able to sort of prescribe it before events happened that proved he was right.
It's also, I mean, look at just to your point. Is Billy Loomis the first on-film incel? Like, this is a guy who gets pissed off because his girlfriend won't have sex with him right now because for whatever reason, who cares? He's driven by her sort of chastity.
The idea of her. So even there's a perfect shot in this scene or in this movie where she's like, I'm ready to have sex, and they hug, and the camera's on his face, and he's like, this is not going to change anything. Still going to have sex, but I'm going to stick to my plans because in my head, she is this person. I want to, Mike, get back to the direction of the movie that Craven does in the set pieces. And again, it reminded me of Nightmare in that we don't realize when watching Nightmare, something that I never realized while watching Scream all those times before, is how much we're in that house before the chaos goes down is very, very purposeful. Because both Nancy and Sydney's house is a fucking mansion. Like in the 90s, guys, people lived right. They lived, like they made $1 million an hour. They lived right. But like the outlay of that house, we are learning without even knowing it. Right. Therefore, when the shit goes down, we know all of these hallways and where the camera goes, we know what to expect. And I think that
where the door locks. And,
exactly. Yeah. And then they have that thing where there's like the second story has like a 1.5 story where the stairs come down on this like little landing. Like that is so important. And we need to know the blueprints of the house before we get to that point.
Also, this is going to be kind of out there, but does that house, is it meant to recall the Psycho house? And is the like center of town that we so often see, is it meant to recall the like Universal Studios lot that is like Stars Hollow? Because I feel like he found locations for this movie that look like the sets that we're used to seeing in movies, but are actually real existing places that suggest these fake sets that we see all the time, which is like another layer in which he kind of interweaves this. Because I kept being like, this looks like the Psycho house, but it's so clearly not. It's
especially Stu's house, I think. Well, I think a lot of the houses do, but Stu's house, the big party house, is definitely
that's all
Psycho.
with the wood paneling, and
it's
so
got
dark.
that stairway right
up the side.
And so it's like there's this thing you keep saying to yourself, I've seen this house, I've seen this house, I've seen this house. This house is like from my dark recollections or something. And also then you're like, but it's a fake place. I know it's a fake place, but I can tell this is a real house. And I just feel like there is something so uncomfortable about the way in which your brain on some level keeps telling you this is a set, this is real, this is a set, this is reality.
I mean, the city itself doesn't make sense. It's a small town, but a big town, but like a tourist trap, but there are no tourists.
But there's like vineyards.
There's vineyards that Nick Cave is playing constantly. Like,
what is it, Dillon, Texas? It's as big as it needs to be.
Right, exact. Dillon, Texas is an exact thing of like there is the poorest of poor and the richest of rich and everything in the middle, because this is just like we made the exact city that we needed for this particular story.
Also, not to be this guy, but if Nightmare on Elm Street kind of always feels like a dream, this always feels like a movie, including characters being like, this feels like a movie.
Yeah.
Except for Sydney does have a speech that's like, no,
it's not a movie, you guys.
And then walks to the camera. Like I'm saying,
Bonk.
Not a movie.
Well, Hot Girl would never pick her nose. It's not a movie. There's so many moments of like falling over with Nev Campbell. We're not here to talk about this yet. Of Nev Campbell and Sydney, but that moment is boss. Before we move on, so Wes Craven reinvigorated horror with this, right? There were so many we saw the big guns come back. Jason came back. Halloween HTO came back. And then Williamson would go on to do I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. We got Urban Legends. We got Final Destination. But did this also ruin horror? Can a movie be so perfect that it just kind of ruins the audiences for future movies?
Okay, I don't know that it ruined horror. I think there are still some great horror movies out, but I think there is a generation of horror movies that are hyper meta and don't do it as well because they're trying to ape Scream.
Yeah.
And that's a frustrating thing, I think.
I do want to write down Send to Hollywood Ape Scream, like Planet of the Apes, but they're all in Scream.
Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. They're making Scream 8, and I think the bad guy is a monkey in the good guy's costume.
That's fucking heartbreaking for me, and
Sorry.
I'm gonna throw myself off.
Sorry to do that to you.
The D at the end of the Hollywood side. But no, like I do think that like it is a thing where it's saying these have now been commented on, right? Like officially on the big, not on message boards, on the big screen. So either come up with your new ways to do them, and that's all genre is, right? It doesn't have to be meta. It's just your new spin on the old tropes, or come up with new tropes. And so I think what he did was dangerous, but that's why he is like the perfect coach, you know, is that like, he is the perfect veteran to come in with all these other kids, including the screenwriter and the cast, is that I will do this, and I will do this well. I will do the tropes well and with a magnifying glass on them. And then it's up to the rest of horror forever. It's up for Wes Carpenter to figure out how horror goes on from here on out.
But and to come back and make a movie that is a sort of perfect encapsulation of horror movies, but also is a feminist movie years before we're having to deal with these things. The fact that we have Sydney being blamed for something that is explicitly, literally not her fault, right? Yeah. And she has to fight the big battle for something that she's just blamed in pop culture. We have Casey, who is punished for making these choices in her love life, and she's punished immediately in the first 5 minutes of the movie.
She's not the only one that's punished. Sydney's mom is punished.
Sydney's mom is punished. Absolutely. Billy and Stu have this like represent this hatred of women that escalates to murder, and they do it with a wink and a nod to commentators to say, look at what we're showing you. And it's one of the things that the movie is so, I think, good at it being sort of prescient by way of commentary.
Yeah, I call Billy and Stu JD and Vance when I watch it now.
That is all the time we have to talk about Wes Craven. No more Wes Craven commentary throughout the rest of this episode, I'm sure. We're going to take the quickest of breaks, and when we come back, get your shopping carts ready, boys. We all know what that little ditty means. It's time to pop those tags and go shopping. The rules of Shopping Spree are so easy. You have, 3 minutes to put in as many items as you want? No, that's a different segment. That's a different show. We're not allowed to do that. We will, of course, go in a very scientifically created order. Now, Ryan, the producers told me to ask you off air, and I forgot. Is this Serpentine?
It is, of course, Serpentine, my good friend, which means every S must be longer than you want it to be.
Yep.
Good job. Did you just put your foot in lava?
I did. You could feel that sizzle. I have so much callus. That's why I didn't react.
I have so much callus.
So we are going to start with Pete, then Ryan, then Greg, and then Greg, and then Ryan, then Pete. And we will do...
Are you sitting out, Mike?
I'm sitting out, yes. There's so many of you.
Oh, okay.
Well, I can't get all the good stuff just because I have this movie memorized.
I'll go 3 times first, and then you guys could.
And then you just... I've been there. I was born in the Maybe Psycho house, so I
was born in the Maybe Psycho house.
You simply visited on the Universal Studios tour.
I was born on the Universal Studios.
They also filmed the Munsters here.
Jaws scared me as a baby.
Well, that's my mom. It popped out. My mom popped me out. I lost the Bane voice.
That big splash of water was actually your mom's voice.
That was your birth moment? Oh, dear.
Pete, let's start with you.
Okay.
What are you grabbing from 1996's Scream?
Look, this was not, I mean, not that much has changed since 1996, and I don't really want a cordless telephone with a bass on it anymore. Like I'm not buying the trivia. But what I do tell you here is that I inherited many years ago a large cabinet tube television that also acts as furniture in a home, and it broke, and my roommate and I threw it off a 5-story building just to see what would happen.
Hell yeah.
And I regret that decision because it was a pain to clean up. But mostly, I want the tube television that is in the opening house. Casey hides.
It's in
Casey's
that house, not the one that kills Stu.
Wooden hutch.
Have you guys seen the ones where people take out the tube and put in a fish tank? That's fucking awesome.
Yeah. I don't think I appreciated what the art was at the time.
Yeah.
And that thing is, that fucking resonates in my living room right now.
Aesthetically, TVs suck these days.
Yeah.
Now you've appreciated it so much, it's the first overall pick. So congratulations on that. It's yours.
You got it.
Hey,
there's no competition.
There's 2 TVs in every house, guys. You can each get one.
That's true.
Dan Aykroyd also died in 97. The same way in Grosse Pointe Blank. Was this just the era?
With a TV.
We're going to get rid of tube TVs with murder?
Has a Frankenstein scar. We called her Frankie, but she has a scar right here under her eyebrow because when I was watching her, our tube TV fell on her.
Why, Mike? How did that happen?
I love Stu.
I love passive voice. What kills Stu when the TV falls on him? Is it the heaviness of the thing, or does he gets
no? Because they're shocked.
I think it's Roger Rabbit rules. Yeah, he gets electrocuted.
He just dies.
Yeah, it's that time of the movie.
Yeah. Guys,
plus, what's in there? What are the gases that are inside those tubes? He probably suffocated on some sort of chemical.
Tubes right up the nose.
Argon
Ryan,
and such.
Do you think a tube TV was a good first round pick, or would you prefer to do whatever you're about to do?
Honestly, Mike, I would take what I'm about to take. I'm not disappointed in Pete's pick, but I do think that this is kind of a movie where we're all going to get what we want, right? There's no blue chippers here. That being said, Mike and Greg know what I'm going to pick, but Pete, as a longtime listener, you know what my lifelong dream is, yes?
Of course, but we can't do that on a podcast.
To have Drew Barrymore's haircut.
Right.
You want that page boy haircut?
Just look like a little Dutch painter.
Yeah.
Just Lord Farquaad over here.
I want a hairstyle. No, Randy's video store is now in my backyard. And if you guys want some physical media, you can come over to my house and rent it. You have to have a membership.
The whole video store?
The whole video store is mine now.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Wow.
Did you notice?
I went way too small.
Yeah, too small. One TV with the first pick. That's ridiculous. Ryan, did you notice $3 for one night?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
With inflation, that's like $10 for one night with a VHS.
Well, if it's your last night on Earth, right? They're all going to get murdered. Who cares?
Digital rentals are now like $4.95, which is not that bad, but also it's digital, which means it's worse.
Also, I love how it's you can rent it for $4.95 or buy it for $15. So would you like to watch it once for $5 or watch it once for $15?
And then you're gambling, which is kind of fun.
Yeah.
Like, I bet I watched this 4 times.
Larry Flint was on sale for $5.95, so I am the proud owner of a digital copy of The People versus Larry Flint. Because I was like, it's $1 more.
Ryan, always pay the $1 more.
Not to
always.
I hesitate to do this because he's in charge of points, but Mike said digital copy, and I want that to be the new name of movies you buy online.
Give me the digital copy.
A digital copy.
We did right. Greg, it's your turn.
It's me. It's the Gregster. I think the houses in this are too big for me. Part of what happens in a horror movie is people are always in these really big houses, and it's just so much easier to get killed or haunted in a big house. I live in a townhouse, and like you can't hide a killer in my townhouse. Like it's going to be so obvious. So I don't want a big house, but I do think they've got like some nice accoutrement. And one thing I really liked is
love that word.
Sydney's house has the biggest deck I've ever seen in my entire life. It like wraps around the house. It's got like stairs that go upstairs. I want a big fuck you deck, dude. I want to have that big deck energy.
She's on the phone with Casey like, hey, you need to pick me up because I'm fucking scared.
Tatum.
And she's like, out of breath because of how much of her deck.
Yeah.
she's
She's
been
just
crossing.
Just walking.
She's just moving across the deck. So
Well,
much
teens,
like
they
Magic the
don't
Gathering, I
they
want to
don't
have an
show
awesome
it.
deck.
Because she okay,
Great.
very good. There's a point. They don't show it because she's our heroine, but in the 90s, the kind of sweater she wore, Sidney Prescott was chowing down some clove cigarettes. So that's why she's wheezing so much.
Oh my gosh. I like how for 1 year we all smoke clove cigarettes, and then when we're done, we're like, "What was that? Why was I doing that? It was awful the entire time."
Well, I was going to make $1 million on the crystals in my lung.
They love
I'm gonna sell
crystals,
them.
yeah, the fiberglass crystals.
Jesus.
All right, so round 1, we have one singular tubed television.
Yeah, no, I sense a strategy change.
In 1996, a video store and Big Deck Energy.
No,
just because it is
yeah.
coming after my heart and it's what I want as well. We're giving
Great.
that big DE.
I feel like this is that was shots fired by going with a house, especially a house that's actually like the registration building for a posh golf club.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go. There's a very specific reason.
Whoa.
What?
Serpentine.
Serpentine, my friend. Serpentine, much like avoiding sniper fire.
But based on that means that Greg goes again. But based on your first pick, Pete, I will say that there was one scene where there's a dresser of Sydney's dad, and in that dresser was one pair of socks. Those are going to be there for you. You're going to draft those.
Okay, first
no
of all,
problem.
flag on the field. I don't even know what the hell you're talking about with Serpentine. I just lost a something. I don't know what I
You
even
didn't
had
lose
to
anything.
lose.
You didn't lose anything. It just means it's Greg's turn again for round 2.
The drafting goes 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3.
Oh, so
That's
all right.
Serpentine,
You just
so
tell me when to talk.
I go-
How about that?
I
This'll
go
be great.
twice. And for my second pick, another feature of the Sydney house. Again, it's too much house for me. I can't do all that house. I'm going to take the deck, but also I really want the closet door that opens up so that it blocks your bedroom door. Man, that's a great little thing there. It is so hard to get murdered if you can sort of block your door with a second door.
Do you mean like how Laverne and Shirley would walk in and...
she does this first to keep her dad out. Again, the filmic language in this is so strong, right? Because first she does it to keep her dad out, and it's like, he's like, I don't want closed doors in my house because my wife was murdered a calendar year ago. 1 year ago, and everybody in this movie is like, are we ever going to get over the fact this lady was brutally murdered, or are we just going to like sit in it forever? It's already almost been a year. But her dad tries to get in, and her front door, the door to her room, if she opens up her closet door, you can get the door to her room open, but you can't quite push it past where the closet door is, and it blocks it. And she uses this to keep Ghostface out of her room, and he just like kind of stabs her out. Come on.
If you come close, I might scratch
Lean
you.
into it. Lee, could you please come here?
You guys understand that this is all from the brain of 1996 Greg mapping out his jerk-off schedule.
Yeah,
And how...
I understand why a teenager wants this, but why does a full adult man who can jerk off wherever he wants in his own home?
It's not, for once, it's not about jerking off. This is, you have to, some nights you're like, you know what? I got to feel a little more secure in my domicile, right? And you're like, because I just watched Scream, and now I'm afraid of getting screamed. And so it would be nice to not have a door that just swings wide open, letting any sort of like Skeets Ulrich's or Matthews Lillard come right into your room, right?
And you know he's going to skeets all over that place.
Seriously, from the window
I
to
can't
the
believe
wall, Ryan.
Greg.
I can't believe I got shit for a classic piece of furniture like that, and Greg gets all the
Pete,
the love for the jerk off doors.
Pete, if you could
nobody's
see-
giving him love yet.
That's why I got the jerk off doors, Pete. Nobody's giving me any love. Pete, literally the number one item on my list, TV hutch. That is the first thing I have on my list. So
Wow.
we are simpatico.
All right, Ryan, what is your number 2 pick? Closet doors are gone.
I'm so torn because
Just that one specific closet door. Any of the other ones from the movie you can have.
it seems like I should draft Sid's house before Greg picks it apart. Also, in one scene...
I love the idea that you have the house, but I have the deck that's totally surrounding it. You can't come out here, dude. This is my
Yeah,
area.
that is sitcom living.
Also, Pete's next, and in one scene in the background, you can see a loaf of white bread, and I know that's what he's going to be going for. So, but I think that I'm going to live my dream. One of my dreams, because I already have a fucking video store, you jerk. I'm going to take a tech van. And a tech van is something you sit in and it has literally everything that's been in every Radio Shack ever. You just gain 50 pounds, like Courtney Cox says to him very rudely, and you wheel around the van and you have everything you need in that van. Incredible windshield wipers that take blood right off and throw bodies willy-nilly.
I did not love that the fat man in this movie is skinnier than all of us. That is really bothersome to me.
Yeah. Welcome to middle age, my friend.
Yeah.
This is Deadwood?
Yeah, Dan.
Yeah.
Dan
the man.
Looking good in 1996.
Yeah.
Pete, you've been accused of going for a loaf of white bread and socks. What are you going to actually
Let me just tell you, I don't need a fake movie game show to get a loaf of white bread.
I got that white bread money.
But I do think that I am going to go for the party house in Tamales, California. Can I just do the whole house now? He's got a video store.
Yeah, you can do the whole house. You don't have to piecemeal it like a weird vulture.
I know. I don't want anybody to have a deck around my house. This is ridiculous how this has gone so far off the rails. What kind of show is this?
It's
I want to do the house because
conservative. It's Tamales, not Tamales or whatever.
Tamales.
Thomas? The town's name is Thomas?
I'll tell you what, you could call it like that when you get the house. I entered a contest with my son when the house went up as a destination on Airbnb to go down for there's a long weekend destination Scream weekend in the house. I think it's still on Airbnb.
That's awesome.
I want it not necessarily for the nostalgia, but for those sweet Airbnb dollars coming in. So I'm in it for the investment.
Savvy.
In real life, though, is it ski country, lake fish country? Like, what is the area?
Murder country.
Yes.
I think it's like sort of Northern California. I think it's wine country.
It looks like based on Sydney looking out her window and there's this gorgeous rolling hills and valleys. I was like, oh, you got that Napa money.
Yeah,
that's why
it is. It's in Marin. It's in Marin County. So,
all right.
So that's Stu's house then.
Yeah, Stu's house.
That's Stu's.
Okay, Stu's house. Pete, your last pick.
Oh, crying out loud. All right. Look, I'm going to go small again. And it's because I am so frustrated with the fashion industrial complex that has subsumed our entire economy. I want a closet full of acid wash jeans with no fucking stretch in them. I just want jeans that are 90s acid washed again. That's all I want. My needs are modest. So
a closet full.
I want a TV. I want a house in Marin County, and I want some jeans.
But yeah, you say because now modern jeans all they're weirdly elastic feeling, right?
Thank you, Greg.
What is it? It's like everything is formal and athleisure at the same time.
Yeah.
So.
Yes. Yeah. I don't want jean leisure. I just want
jean leisure.
I want something that stands up to me being on my knees panning for gold 14 hours a day.
in Tamales.
My mom called me the other day and she said, when you were staying here, did you leave a pair of jeans that are covered in holes? And I was like, I don't think so. I'm not an 80s rock star lead singer. She's like, I think they're yours. I finally got them back. They're at one pocket edge. It's a little bit ripping. So there's one hole sort of in the
Oh, Ryan's mom. Never change. Ryan, what is your final pick?
I have to, Mike, and you know that I absolutely have to go. And I'm not a violent guy. I just want violence to happen when I want it, and when I want it is a lot. And when I'm going to use it, the main weapon of destruction from here on out is, why don't you crawl through that garage door and see what happens? My garage door has not just a doggy door, but it's like a guillotine doggy door that will put your brain in the specific spot it needs to smash open. Well, mostly I'm going to put bags of oranges for OJ in the morning.
Sure.
And then that's
freshly
how I'm going to get my juice.
squeezed.
Yes, I want freshly squeezed juice.
You always leave out bags of oranges for OJ.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're getting wasted. They're getting fruit flies. I'm just going to put them in the garage doggy door hole.
I do it feels very romantic that Tatum and Stu die in ways that make no fucking sense for anybody to die.
That same thing that if a leaf blows under it while your garage door is going down, that same thing is killing her. It rips her head off, basically.
Well, you saw how hard the motor was working.
The motor was
I was wondering, what are we looking at in terms of a torque conversion on that garage door because that's extraordinary. My garage door is a real dandy.
Yeah, exactly.
I look at it funny, and the thing like shrinks up.
I can't open. I'm sorry, bro.
A cut scene.
Not while you're looking at me.
Stu and Billy went to a hardware store across town 3 days before and just like amped the fuck. The whole house is actually Home Alone, and we just don't get to see it.
But yeah, I love them turning every screw tight and thinking this will do it, right? Like, but yeah, I have the same problem here. Like, garage doors are like the printer of the house. Like, you're so fucking lucky if they work. But this one, magic, right? Can I just have a magic door?
Magic door.
It just works. You just want a garage that works. Greg, your final pick. What other piece of Sydney's house? You felt a faux pas to get the whole house, but what other piece would you like?
I am going to go with in a lot of horror movies, especially Wes Craven movies, you're often like, is there like a gas leak in this town? Is there like what is something wrong with all of these people? Like, they're not thinking clearly.
It's like basically everybody's dressed normal, but it's Wonderland from Alice in Wonderland.
The cops are like actually looking around for the killer. Dewey disappears. He comes back with a strawberry ice cream cone, and I would like that strawberry ice cream cone, the one that takes him off the case temporarily. Dewey, not the most attentive cop, not always on task. Goes for that ice cream
There's
cone.
a shot in that scene where because his boss is smoking and he quit smoking, so like obviously he's now under stress. He drops a cigarette and puts it out, and I thought Dewey to
stub it out.
Stub
power
the
move.
ice cream cone.
God, that would have been a power
because
move.
I should also quit my addiction.
Drop
fucking ice cream cones.
Because that whole scene, every drag the boss does, Dewey licks the cone.
Yeah.
Like he does mirror him for a while.
I've seen
this
some
movie
shit.
rules.
Oh, Casey, why does nobody in the town take me seriously? Mom said you have to take me seriously. Lick, lick, lick.
Again, it's Tatum. Casey is Drew Barrymore.
Sorry.
Tatum is Rose
Sorry,
McGowan.
everybody.
I'll probably remember that, Mike.
Nope. Greg got strawberry ice cream. Ryan got
the strawberry ice cream cone.
Cone, of course. We're not fucking with cups here. Ryan got a garage door that doesn't break and can lift human bodies and squeeze orange juice. And Pete got all the acid wash jeans in the movie. I think for this third one, I have to give that to Ryan because I really see that
Ryan.
The applicability. Applicability?
Awesome.
Nailed it, bud.
We're so nervous
I
to talk
did.
shit on him. This is such a weird season.
That's the way I'm going to say it from now on. I like it better.
Oh, no, yeah. Like,
definitely.
I'm going to
dude.
call
That's
Webster's
so
and
cool.
say, you should call Oxford and tell him.
We're going to take the quick breaks, and when we come back, more Scream. Taste buds, I would like to talk about the performances, specifically the big three. After a contract battle, the producers of the next Scream movie realized that Neve Campbell is important to the franchise. After just watching this movie, does that still seem to be true? Is she easily replaceable? Or is a Neveless Scream like a Jamie Lee-less Halloween?
Watching the Screams that I have, and I have seen this one more times than the rest of the Screams put together, if we're being honest. I don't know if she's ever done anything in Scream 2 through 7, add them all up, if you could add up talent like this. I think that she is so fucking great in this movie that she should just get one of those like sports contracts where like you were like the Stephen Curry contracts where like play here forever because of what she does in this movie. She is doing so many things
Ryan.
as far as innocent but veteran, as far as like virgin but sultry, as far as I don't watch the movies but I know the movies. And she's doing these within frames. Like she is changing her face within frames that I would give her the Scream Queen title right now. Sorry, Jamie Lee, but you didn't deserve that Everybody Everywhere All at Once Oscar, and now you're going to lose this.
Sheltered but world weary. I think all of her back and forths are very impressive, but that one where you're like, I have only lived in the small town, but I get how the fucking world works.
Also,
she should be the one smoking the cigarette.
Ryan,
and the ice cream cone.
You mentioned Wonderland earlier, and she's very much like an Alice figure. You know, like she's like very open and quick to like sort of be like, oh, I must be the one who was mistaken here. I must be doing this in a weird way, and not realizing that actually the whole world is what is completely messed up, and then,
which is very hard to relate to for someone who like went through high school and feel like you're the only normal one. Like I don't get that at all. But like I think the perfect thing that you're talking about, Greg, is when she is woken up from a nap. Right, Tatum is supposed to pick her up, and she's not there yet, and the killers call her, and you can see her trying to be like, she's nervous, but she's also thinking, but she also wants to keep them on the line, but she wants to play their game, but she also wants to like figure out what's going on all at the same time. Those are the scenes.
Yeah, watching her be terrified and then super brave in the face of that fear, like, and seeing that actually come through.
One of the things that's I think so great about her is that, and one of the reasons I was so excited to see her in this movie is because I was like a Party of Five.
Oh,
fan,
hell yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, she is Julia Salinger and a target for murder in this movie. And that's one of the things I think is so great. Like, her personality, like, I guess the bigger question is Neve Campbell ever not this like character?
Yeah.
Right. What's her range? She happens to have extraordinary charisma, and I love watching her perform, but has she transcended like character work?
Also in 1996, a movie that fans were mad that we kicked out immediately, I don't think there was hemming nor hawing, is The Craft.
The Craft.
Yeah.
And she does play no confidence, super shaky, not tough as nails, kind of put upon and bullied. And so maybe she did it all in 96. And then,
that was the
I will
whole
be
thing.
Sidney Prescott forever.
Well, and I'm not saying I'm not able to celebrate the entire catalog of Neve Campbell. So I regret to say my breadth of understanding of her work is limited to Party of Five and Scream, but it does, and whatever else I happen to see incidentally. But I do think that there is something to that she is an amazing Sidney Prescott, and she does what this part demands the best that it can be done for me.
Doesn't she have like a diminishing role over the course of the series, though, Mike? Doesn't her part get smaller and smaller?
Equal in number 2. It's still about her, and then having just watched number 3 again this very day, it's crazy. She's in a separate movie from most of the cast for most of it. She's like, if I live near people, I almost die, and so do they. I'm out. I'm out of the world.
Which makes sense, right?
Yeah, and then she gets drawn into the world, but like every once in a while, you'll check on her, and she's like on the like emergency hotline. That's her job, and then she gets pulled in eventually. But it's crazy. I did not remember that about number 3. It's really, I guess, Courtney Cox and David Arquette, but it's really like new characters and just like
she was too busy.
Group.
The actress Neve Campbell at that time was so busy that they had to like reduce her role, and I think that's why she's in like you said, like she's in a different movie. I think part of what they did is they like had a different crew that filmed her stuff alone.
But they did.
Well, the other thing too that you get
place.
with that strategy is that you get to put Neve Campbell on the poster and in the trailer for the Neve heads.
Yep.
But then also deliver the new characters, but for the people that don't give a shit about her. So you get to do both at the same time. And I think that like what I'd rather do than like figure out Neve's range is compare Neve to people that also had this part, and like I don't think she might still have like her Tarantino or Wes Anderson casting in her in the future. Like she might be nominated for Best Supporting Actress in the next 10 years. We don't know,
of course,
but I think that we were so fucking worn down by these 2-dimensional characters who were just there to run and scream, show some tits, run and scream, that on paper, this character is pretty good. What she brought to it, I think, made it an all-timer, right?
She has this way of blinking that I think she is like a master of. Like, she does so much, like what my wife likes to call face acting, where there's like these little like micro movements that make her emotions very clear and very believable.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is like blinking and turning her head slightly, but like it's so, I think the word charming has been thrown around a lot. Like,
and when you do
real.
this wrong, what you're talking about, when you do this wrong, you are fucking so wrong. Like, this is what almost derailed.
You look like a weird haunted doll.
Yes. Like, this is what I think derailed Ryan Gosling's career for like 10 years. It's just that he was trying to do what Greg just described Neve is doing. And I think that Leo tries to do this of just like, oh, I'll just act with my face. And then they just make all these weird sort of movements and tics.
Like even an eye boogie, you can't get out and you won't use your hands.
Exactly, yeah. There's also a look to her too, where she does have like this. There's something about like the nose and the freckles of even her face as it is can combine all of these like cute and sexy and smart and scared features at the same time.
she very much feels like Nancy in that way of like, you're young, and she has like bigger kind of buck teeth, which is adorable. And I think eventually she gets them Hollywooded out, which is a bummer.
Boo.
But like, she looks young in like the best way in this movie. Like, no, she's coming of age by fighting for her life and getting out there. And then in the series, what's cool is she, not the full Sarah Connor, but she gets. They never dwell on it, but she clearly goes to self-defense classes because Sydney kicks some ass and like hides guns in ways that killers don't expect. Like, she turns into a total badass, because if people every couple years try to remind you of your dead mom and kill you, you're going to get good at fighting, and she does.
No, I don't think it's unfair to call that the Sarah Connor turn for Sidney Prescott. I think that's absolutely true, and I think they did the Sarah Connor thing where they realized, okay, now we've cemented this character as something else, and we have all kinds of contract challenges and scheduling challenges, and we need to revitalize the series because there's still money to be made. Let's put Jenna Ortega in there, who I think actually has the same vibe that we get it for today that we had in Neve Campbell, which is unique. And I think that's one of the sort of generational kind of pop culture performers that I think really, really works. So I think Neve Campbell, I think she's really special in this movie. And I think as you said, Ryan, like looking at other people who have the role, I think she sets a tone that others have really matched well.
Right. And even if we're talking about whoever was on the Hall of Fame before that, like Jamie Lee Curtis and Nancy, what's her name? From Nightmare.
Heather Langenkamp.
Thank you.
And Dee Wallace and the Scream Queens.
She is so much more naturalistic that when you go back and watch them, when you go back and watch Heather Langenkamp after watching Neve Campbell, she is so, I'm acting.
Yeah.
She would find it, but it would slip through her fingers. I think
Right.
she like legitimately got herself super worked up a few times, and that presented as like very real.
Which for all we know was the director on the set like actually fucking with her.
Being a dickhead.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I feel like we've had less of those stories than we have in previous seasons, but still.
Let's go from naturalistic to, I just wouldn't use that word. How about our two killers? How they're filling out the big three. How are Lillard and Ulrich doing in their performances? Do they manage to be engrossing throughout, or do they ever hit that over-the-top land a little too hard?
All right, let's get the easy one out of the way. I think that Skeet is Depp Jr. Like, he's serviceable.
Yeah. Lillard, I think, if you look at the balance of the entire performance, you come away from the moments where he was over the top being like, well, yeah, of course he's a little over the top. He
was an insane 17-year-old.
Yeah, and he clearly, like, Billy has like is like you're more what you think of when you think of a psychotic. But Stu is like, he has like acquired like Billy's psychoticism a little bit. You know, it seems like he's like kind of like a wannabe Billy when he kills people. He's sadistic, but Stu, when he kills people, he seems to kind of just like stab them real quick.
Yeah.
Wipe the blood off the blade like really, really quickly.
He's more into talking about it and like making jokes before and after. I think the actual killing is just so he can do his little monologues.
And I think that some of the greatest moments of the movie come from Matthew Lillard, and they feel highly improvisational, like lines that he delivers very, very well that feel very live in the moment.
One of those moments, when I think it's one of the best moments in the film, because it actually makes these characters provocatively more than just sociopaths, is when they're confronting Sydney in the kitchen at the end and they're covered in blood, and there's Billy threatening her with the knife, and Stu comes over and drapes himself over his over Billy's shoulders, and there's this real homoerotic tension that you have to know comes from like this exuberance in violence and this heightened emotional thing. Who knows what their reality is, but it is such a provocative like 30 seconds of screen time that I'm just riveted by what they've chosen to do there. And that also feels, in the moment, it feels like they're just doing stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's an amazing moment that I remember the first time I saw it and watching it this time. And I'll go back to Clueless. In the very first scene of Clueless, they're all hanging out by the fountain, which this movie has too, where the five of them are, as if they're in the opening credits to the sitcom that they're in, are out eating lunch in front of a fountain.
The sitcom that one of the actresses is literally in, Friends.
Right.
Exactly.
But Alicia Silverstone says in the first scene of Clueless, like, I bet you think you're watching a Noxzema commercial. And there's something that Stu hanging on Billy is almost performative in like that is for Sydney. Look how close, look how cool and close we are that like we hug like this because we're in charge, man. I think that so much of Matty L's performance is a lot like Jim Carrey walked, man, so I could run, so Stifler could fly. And so even though it isn't perfect all the time, and even though it shows its rust, I think that how it time capsules this movie is fucking so on point.
And I could argue anytime he's too big and annoying you, he's 17.
No, yeah, totally.
Like I think he captures that. Like he is the character of Stu is acting.
Also, Greg, can you imagine hanging out with somebody about this age that would always say just the most inappropriate thing because they thought it was funny and nobody else did?
I could not imagine that, Ryan.
Well,
and frankly, I won't imagine it.
And Lillard, so Loomis and Lillard were both 26 when they played these roles.
Jesus Christ.
Crazy.
Yeah.
They're fantastic. I find it unacceptable that Ryan said, so Stifler could fly, and I didn't hear his name for the points.
Sometimes you don't.
Yeah, you don't hear him.
Yeah, sometimes
a point was given. I don't know. If
I just want to make sure because that was an extraordinary.
All right.
Also,
call.
I have to say
that might have been too much.
Part of the joy of rewatching the movie is that Stu makes no effort to hide the fact that he's one of the two killers.
No.
Like, it's so obvious everything he says. Every single line that he says about the killers, obviously he's aggrandizing them. But, and this is what's so perfect about Wes Craven, everybody in this town is so weird that it actually doesn't stick out that much. That the killers are basically announcing themselves in every single scene doesn't stick out because the town is so deeply sick that everybody kind of seems like the killer.
Which reminds me of Twin Peaks. Not as much as the scene where Tatum comes out into the garage. That reminds me of Twin Peaks the most. But other than that, it's a lot of Twin Peaks.
Because boobs, Ryan.
That was a boob joke.
That's a very 90s thing.
Boob jokes?
Pop culture around the 90s discovered that the human nipple could become hard. And this became like very desirable. And so suddenly all female characters had hard nipples all the time. And then it got released that most of them were wearing like false hard nipples in their bras. And I guarantee you, Rose McGowan is wearing them through the bulk of this scene. They're like little pebbles.
Yeah.
Well, she opened the fridge for a second.
It's when she opens the garage door, Ryan, and they're both like fully engaged.
Getting back to Greg's last good point. I think he's totally right in saying that Billy is all about. No, I found, and he's a psycho looking for a motive, right?
Stu.
Sorry.
Yeah.
No, Billy. Billy, like.
Billy's motive is revenge. He's not looking for motive. He's just a little bitch.
I know, but I'm saying that he was born fucked up, and he went out.
Right.
And
There's no way his actual motivation is your mom banged my dad, and that's why I'm going to kill everybody in this fucking town.
My help was that.
He's very sensitive, you guys.
But it does
not take much.
Going back to what Greg said about Stu, he talks like that. He's like, I don't know. I think that their killers are cool or whatever. Is because that's what his motive is like to be a star. Like
he's an edgelord.
I'm in the story. Yeah,
he wants to be part of the cult of masculinity. That this movie is not really. It's homoerotic, but they don't have a homosexual love for each other.
Great.
But there is something so incredibly homoerotic about the way men cling to each other. And then they alienate the women in their lives, and they victimize the women in their lives because it has typically been the province of men to make their strongest relationships with other men, and how kind of that has twisted us because we don't interact with women on the right level because we're always looking back to other men and being like, aren't you so impressed?
Did I do it right? Did I do it fucking dope?
Kevin Williamson grew up a closeted gay man. Yeah. And then he's now said, he's like, it was not in my forefront of my brain writing this, but now watching him, this movie gay. But it's also interesting because there's that between them. But he's saying what Nev goes through, what Sydney goes through, is what he relates to the most is the survival and being gay in a small town and feeling the paranoia she feels if it's all around her is what's in it for him.
Well, I'm sorry. We can't ignore the fact that there are actually good representations of masculinity in this movie, right? I think Jamie Kennedy plays a role that is a positive, the weird role of positive masculinity. And we have Dewey, David Arquette. And both of those characters are marginalized as weird in this movie. Yet they are there to be helpful, right? The real masculine men are homoerotic serial killers.
I'll give you Dewey. I think he is like he's a little doofy, but he's a good guy. Jamie Kennedy is a nice guy, and they deal with it a little. They're like, wait, would she date me? Like he
they don't give him a lot.
That line I feel like betrays that character a little because we don't really get that many hints of that.
Well,
and then it's like, oh, he's just
okay. If I may step in here real quick, because I never spent any time in my youth as a Billy. Okay, but I spent some time as a Stu, and I definitely spent a lot of time as a Randy, where two hot couples would say, "Hey, weirdo, why don't you hang out with us for no reason?
Yes.
Like, why don't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Why don't you annoy us, and we'll tell you to go away, and then bring you back constantly?" And I think that like the fact that he has a crush on Sid, I think it feels natural, and I feel like that he steps into Stu's traps constantly because somebody like Stu, and again, I feel like I've been back and forth between the Stu and the Randy my entire life, will set traps for him like that. You know, like, oh, you're dorky. I don't feel great about myself. Fuck you.
yeah.
I think that the Randy character, Jamie Kennedy and I have some weirdness between us. I don't know if I appreciate his entire oeuvre, but I think that he's great in this role as like Wes Craven proving that just because you're into movies doesn't make you a weirdo.
Right.
Being a weirdo makes you a weirdo.
And that's what's awesome. Billy is equally into movies as Randy, but he doesn't make it his whole personality outwardly. Only when he's really comfortable does he let you know he's super.
Only with his, I guess, only with Sydney because he's like manipulating and torturing her every time they have an interaction. But it really is so creepy how often they're having a conversation and he's like, yeah, because it's just like this movie. Like that's basically all he says to her is some reference back to movies.
The one cool guy, basically James Franco, is hanging out with all these other freaks and geeks, and then at the end he's like, "We all go a little crazy sometimes." Psycho, Alfred Hitchcock, 1963. Ever heard of it?
Yeah, the fact that he did that, I did not remember the filmography. I just
Principal
thought he said
photography by.
Jesus.
But that was his best moment in the movie, right? Like his turn, that was his best bit. It was great. It's maniacal.
That and 3 minutes later, where I think it's Randy's like, "Well, this is where they come back alive," and he's like, "Ah!" And then Sydney in the
domes him, dude.
Yeah.
That is all the time we have to talk about the acting. We're going to take the quickest breaks, and when we come back, it's trivia time. Trivia. That's right, little robot. It's time for trivia. Taste buds, here are the rules. I will read a question. You will ring in with your name and not too early, or else I will wait for you to be last. And then if you get it wrong, somebody else can scoop.
Harsh.
Let's start. What real-life couple met on the set?
Brian.
Pete.
Greg.
David Arquette and Courtney Cox.
Correctamundo.
Greg.
What was the original title of Scream?
Ryan.
Greg.
Pete.
Scary Movie.
Correct. Oh, I should do these. I'm just giving you points, but not giving you points. You know what I'm saying?
Nope.
Nobody at home does.
What other couple met on the set of Scream?
Ryan.
Ryan.
Rich and Matthew Lillard.
Oh, adorable. No. Matthew Lillard and Neve Campbell.
They were a couple, or are they still? Well,
no. Come on, that's 30 years ago. But they were. Even though he got this role because he was with another girlfriend just on the lot, casting person saw him talk and went, "Hey, I need you to read for this movie right now," and he did cold and got it.
Wow. And a girlfriend.
And then he upgraded girlfriends. I don't know. The other one probably becomes lovely.
Did he make his teeth really tiny for the audition, or was he just born like that? Yeah.
No, he was like, pop these out, throw chiclets in. What is the adapted story called in universe in the sequels?
Greg. Stab.
It is Stab. What is Billy's last name?
Ryan.
Greg.
Pete.
Ryan.
Loomis.
It is Loomis. What is that a reference to?
Ryan. Is it somebody from Halloween?
Yes. I'll
The
give you
doctor
a
from
point for
Halloween?
that. There we go. I was going to give somebody a steal. It's Dr. Loomis from
Dang.
Halloween. Other than the incredibly young age, I was 10. Other than the incredibly young age, what is unusual about the first time Mike watched Scream?
Greg.
He
was on drugs.
I wasn't. It was a year before I did drugs.
Okay. And I don't know if we talk about that on this show.
Yeah, neither do I. I have a past.
Ryan.
Ryan.
It was with your parents. First horror movie with your parents.
No. Pete, just say something.
You discovered the joys of jerk-off doors.
I think probably, but no, I watched it from my stair landing because my sister and her friends were watching and said I wasn't allowed to be in the living room with them.
You stared from the stairs?
So I watched it like between the bars.
Outstanding.
I was in movie jail. What are the rules of a horror movie?
Ryan.
Ryan?
Don't have sex. Do not drink or do drugs. Basically commit no sin. And never say, I'll be right back.
Correct. Other than Friday the 13th, Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, and Psycho, name a horror movie referenced in this film.
Greg. Prom Night?
Yes. I'm going to give this, everybody gets a chance. Ryan?
Trading Places.
That's not a horror movie.
Did you see how the poor person got rich, Mike?
Gentleman ghost over here.
Yeah, what do you got?
Ryan. The Terror.
Yes, Pete. Don't just give it up.
Popcorn, 1991.
Popcorn, the movie?
Yeah.
Is that a movie?
Yeah.
And they say, I mean, she makes popcorn here. I don't know if they ever talk about the movie Popcorn.
Well, I don't think they talk about the movie Popcorn, but there's this. Probably not. But you should see the movie because it's so self-referential. It's like the precursor to Scream from 91, and it's daffy.
I'll give you a point for knowledge, and if I look this up and this is a fake movie and this is a put on, I will be so upset.
If you're telling me I can get away with fake movies on this show,
no,
I'm definitely coming back.
Ryan.
What? Ryan?
The Revenge of the Boogala Boogalas.
Oh no! What show starring Liev Schreiber is famously bad around these parts of town?
Ryan.
Ray
Donovan.
It's Ray Donovan.
Oh yeah.
Liev Schreiber plays Cotton Weary. He's a bigger role in the other movies. He's barely in this one.
Hey, Mike, leave Schreiber alone.
Who are you, Matthew Lillard?
Liver.
What children's museum did Mike's older sister scare Mike playing the Scream Scary movie game via closed LAN system? And I didn't know it was a closed system, so I thought it was being harassed.
Ryan.
Can you make heads or tails of what you're being asked?
Well, Trebek, I'm going to say it's the Discovery Science Museum.
That's such a good guess, but no.
The
Philadelphia.
Philly. There's no museums in Philly.
Greg.
Does it have something? Oh.
The Liberty Bell Museum.
No.
Featuring Liberty Bell.
It's called Liberty Square,
Pete,
but no. Yes,
was
Pete?
it something underneath the Rocky statue?
It's the Franklin Institute. That is at a museum that we do have in Philly, Pete. But no, that's at the art museum. It's the Franklin Institute.
I feel so dumb now.
Yeah, you guys are chumps. Who is the first person to say Ghostface?
Greg.
Rose
McGowan, Tatum.
Yep.
Oh, that's a good question.
I do so bad most trivias, and I'm doing okay.
If you had said Casey, that would have been like a swing point for me.
Choice.
Which of these stars is in a terrible quote unquote documentary?
Ryan.
Rose
McGowan?
No. I mean maybe, but no.
Possibly, but no.
It's, Pete. Gotta go Skeet.
No.
Greg.
Matthew
Lillard.
No.
Ryan. Is it the X?
No, it's Jamie Kennedy.
Yeah.
What is the documentary
called? We
called?
call him the X.
Greg.
Jamie Kennedy Experience. He's JKX.
Oh, God, that's actually a deep cut. I watched that once or twice.
Greg, what is this documentary called?
I thought you were talking about the Jamie Kennedy Experience as well. JKX.
No, it's called Heckler, and it's just him whining about people who are mean to him. It's not even about hecklers. Like, it's pitched as like, we're going to get in the mind of hecklers. But he's like, you said this about me on the radio, and I didn't.
Holy moly.
I honestly think that more people in the world knew that you and your sister went to the Franklin Institute than have heard of that documentary.
Some people are so sensitive they should never become like I'm very, very
Right.
sensitive. I'm glad I'm in no way famous because you end up doing stuff like that. You have to defend yourself against everyone who's ever been mean to you in a documentary.
What other movie stars David Arquette and Rose McGowan that a young Mike thought was underrated, but he cannot back that up now?
Ryan. Is it Ready to Rumble?
It is Ready to Rumble.
Yes.
I love
Who
watching
plays
you two do
Jimmy
that.
King in Ready to Rumble?
Ryan.
Ryan.
Going back to this time, I'm gonna say Seth Green.
No.
Dude, that's a good guess, though, right?
That is a
Greg.
good guess. Greg.
I'm going to say Giovanni Ribisi.
Oh, man. Yeah, if I was saying, no, Jimmy King is the wrestler they look up to. And it's Scott Kahn. It's the young Kahn who's against David Arquette. But who plays Jimmy King? He's older.
Joe Pantoliano.
That is so close. It's Oliver Platt.
Joey Pants.
What horror movie does Platt appear in that Mike made his siblings watch before they spent time at an upstate New York lake when they were kids?
Ryan.
Lake
Placid.
It's Lake Placid.
Awesome.
Or as I called it in my house, Lake Placid. Thank you.
There we go. What TV show did writer Kevin Williamson create that Mike spent too much time watching as a kid?
Ryan.
Pete.
Ryan.
Dawson's Creek.
Dawson's Creek.
The Creek.
Does Dawson's Creek hold up?
Greg.
No, it does not.
No.
Protest.
But the Bee in Apartment 23 still does, Mike. So check that out. The Bee in Apartment 23. Another
There's
James
no way.
Van Der Beek vehicle. I guarantee it.
Anything with Katie Holmes still holds up. So Dawson's Creek is good.
Oh, man. That is all the time for trivia. Thank you for playing. We're all winners here. We're going to take the quickest of breaks, and when we come back, more Scream. Taste buds, all who inhabit the ghost face, those who put on the mask, are horror movie fans who say movies make killers better killers. Is this movie a condemnation on horror movies or fan culture?
I think that there's a lot of time. This won't be a Ryan monologue. I'll go fast. There's a lot of time spent in this movie very thoughtfully to make sure that if you're watching it, you do not take away that pop culture is responsible for psycho things happening.
Yeah, I have a bone of contention with the idea that like movies make that they like are creative forces for psychos. Like, does he really believe that when he says it? Because I can't think of any, and maybe I'm just wrong, but like real killers, I think they like review what other real killers have done. But is anyone actually sitting there learning how to kill somebody from a movie? Like,
no, the true psycho is somebody who doesn't watch movies.
Yeah,
Right.
That's
The true
weird.
psycho is somebody who has actually grew up in a place of violence, in an environment with violence in their family.
yeah,
Japan is wildly noted for having the highest rates of consumption of violent media and the lowest rates of violent crime. Like there's just statistically, there is a very shaky connection between that argument. It feels good to make it because we get shocked by all of the violence in media, but that it's way too weak.
What Pete is saying is very like hard to figure out. Like, where did this come from? That takes a lot of research. If we just say that they bought a Marilyn Manson CD, that's really easy. And so let's blame
exactly.
that.
I feel like also like there is something in the equation, but it's not kids watch these things and become violent. It's why are we so addicted to this violence? Like, why is Scream a fun time at the movies? Beyond the jokingness of it, like, we can't deny that there must be something wrong with us if we kind of want to see these characters get gutted and be hung from the goalposts. Like, and I think that Wes Craven is commenting on a sickness. I just think that we are looking in the wrong places for the sickness that he's really talking about.
And yeah, I don't think he at all. I think it's one of your sociopaths are saying movies make killers more creative. I don't think Wes Craven or the movie is saying that at all.
Yeah.
It's because it's in the same where they're going back and forth. They're like, it's almost the millennium. Motives are so passe. I don't think you can take anything those two losers.
Part of what I think
the movie means this.
The movie sort of like hints at the beginning of this attention economy, though. There does seem to be this like understanding within the universe of this movie that one day attention is going to be all that really matters to anybody. And I think that's another way in which it like. It's not that moment wasn't happening right then. It's that it like is so much stronger now, and it feels like he could feel the swell of this developing.
And the franchise discovers it over subsequent films, too.
I was going to say the one interesting thing 4 does, but I don't think it executes it well, is the killers do like live stream and get like whatever kitty cat points or whatever. Like there's like it's all for the do it all for the likes.
But I do think in this weird way that this movie is all about the technology of the time, not knowing what technology will become. Like, it is saying, look at the stuff that we had in 1996. Isn't this crazy? Isn't this a lot? we don't have smartphones yet, but like all of the uses of contacting each other are, so much more in focus than any movie of the 80s.
Right.
We can call people so much easier, or, faxes or whatever the case. All of the tech that is in the tech van that I now own. Thank you, everybody, for that. I mean, they literally watch a movie of them watching a movie in the movie that we're watching. Like, they're saying, like, look at how all of this tech is, like, we're relying on it now.
Can I just say, if the movie wants to talk about relying on tech, when the killer's talking, if he's really using a cell phone in wine country, shouldn't it be like, hey, sit outside, and you're gonna, and she's like, you're breaking up, I can't quite hear.
I'm gonna hang up because this is frustrating.
Yeah.
So what?
Somebody better stab me in the head.
What even would a Zoom podcast be at that point? If that's how a phone call works.
I do love, like, the first ever time I could ever remember seeing video streaming, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, there's a 30-second delay, which they instantly forget.
Yeah, they remind themselves over and over again.
Yeah.
It's a funny thing, though, with this movie, especially watching it with the gift of hindsight, right? Because it's like foveal focus. Like, we see the movie and it's crystal clear what we're watching, and we're getting the dopamine hit, which is the satisfaction that we get from horror movies, not the training. We're training ourselves to be sociopaths. We just look at why people are killing each other in our brains. It fills in the blanks and says, you know what, this also, I live in metaphor, in vengeance metaphor, and I get excited seeing bad people get a comeuppance. They don't have to be murderers in my life. They get a comeuppance. My brain fills in all the gray stuff around the edge and makes it crystal clear with the gift of the 30 years of history that I have since seeing this movie. And it makes the movie feel smarter than maybe it was at the time.
Yeah, but like, I still kind of have to give it credit too, and especially because we did happen to watch this just a couple of episodes after we watched Nightmare. But another big thing between Nightmare as like the beacon of that era and Scream of this one is how in the 80s, parents were essentially as evil as the supernatural monster that was trying to kill you. And in this movie, they're almost completely removed, right?
Like Cindy's dad,
right?
Yeah.
Cindy's dad drives away, and Dewey and Courtney Cox are basically our adult role models. They are children. They are.
We got one more. We got the Fonz.
Okay, so
Mr. Himbry.
If
the principal,
he was innocent in what he was accused of, and yet should have died. It's very clear that he was a pervert,
dude,
monster.
Yeah.
And I think by removing,
let's get ready to cringe a little bit later.
By removing that, they're doing this thing where, like, by saying we're not going to focus on the generations, it gives them other things to focus on, and the movie swells with all the other stuff.
Well, do you think the movie is saying is one thing? Is it just sick modern kids, sick society, overabundance of violence, too much stabbing and not enough fucking, not enough good fucking? What is the movie saying?
I mean, like, there was a podcast that was released recently of this recording. I don't know when this is going to drop. An episode of You're the Worst that was about Dungeons and Dragons and all the crazy stuff that came out of that, right? And it was similar to horror movies.
Are you wrong about?
You mean you're wrong about?
What did I say?
You're the Worst.
You're the Worst is a
on
great
FX.
TV show.
Check it out streaming on Hulu.
That's probably on Hulu, right?
Yeah, you can check
FX
that out
on
Hulu.
Hulu is its own thing. So You're Wrong About talked about D&D and how this person, did some bad stuff and he played D&D. Therefore, D&D is bad. And I think this does that with horror movies in a much more subtle way of saying, like, these people watch horror movies. Look at all the people who watch horror movies who are not doing it. It's not evidence of anything.
The delight of the horror movie is that we see suffering and that we know it's not real and we can disengage from it. It allows us to almost emotionally insist this like terribleness that is at the core of the human experience, which is loss and deterioration and death and destruction. And we are able to put it into something and then point at it and say, there it is. It's all right there. And I can engage and I can disengage and I can engage and I can disengage. And that makes me feel like I have some sort of control over the madness of the universe.
It's a great point, and it gets right back to another, franchise that we sort of grew up with when I was in middle school, high school, which was Faces of Death.
Oh, God.
Remember those?
Yeah, unfortunately.
Now that is a markedly different experience watching those videos, and I it's one of those that I sort of regret having been introduced to, because you don't have the benefit of the separation of the fact that you know that it's not real.
That was one of the first times in my life, and it would become a perpetual habit. But when the Faces of Death would come out, I'd be like, all right, everybody, have fun. I have never seen any of that stuff. They would describe some of them to me, and I couldn't believe they were watching it. I would literally go sit in the other room, which was not super well received.
Greg would disappear whenever a new Faces of Death came out, and I would disappear. So it was like WrestleMania for me. I would just be like, "This is too,"
because you were too worried about like
too real
injuries and stuff.
Yeah.
Think about WrestleMania. It is also faux violence, but going back, like, do we have us innately to our DNA going back to like people used to watch gladiators kill each other? Like, is there a natural lust for violence?
You got to fucking fight. I mean, that's what it is. Like, we are here to fuck, and we are here to fight. Like, we have that in us still. That thing where we are a scared animal and we're afraid of being cornered. Look at the way this movie conceives of modern housing. It is a completely open to every side. You are visible from every side. You are more visible standing inside the house than you are standing outside the house. There's no walls. Nothing protects us. And so, like, we have in us still this intrinsic fear of all of these things. And we are ready to fight at any moment because I think it's hardwired into us.
But by watching these movies, we're not going out and killing people. And we're also, and I think not equally as importantly, but around there, we're not more worried that we're going to get killed. Because last week we did an episode about a biopic about like a smut guy. Next week we might do like a biopic about like a unicorn. We just move from genre to genre and we appreciate them all, and they all give us different things. This one shows us this violence, and we're whisked away to this world, which to Pete's point is different than Faces of Death and is very different than killing people.
I have to say, I feel like Speed Route is upon us.
Wow.
Is this movie at all less fun? I think, Greg, you hinted at this earlier. Is it less fun as adults than it was when we were kids watching two boys murder their classmates a couple years pre-Columbine?
Yeah, I do have to say, this is exactly what I was going to say, actually, which is that like there's a way in which this movie has not escaped reality because reality sort of like doubled back on it in a weird way. But I think that like before Columbine, there was just not really school shootings. And since then, they have been a perpetual part of our existence. And I'm not saying that this movie has anything to do with that, except that it's hard to watch it and feel like, yeah, this kind of stuff doesn't happen, because two boys deciding to kill a bunch of people for kind of the lulls of it all, like that is something that did and does happen still. And so like as a kid, I thought it was more escapist, honestly, than as an adult, because it's like this toxic masculinity, this like falling into each other and allowing yourself to victimize all the women around you and to make them insane and to also like sexually abuse them. That seems like a little bit too real now that I've had time to sort of like see what the world is really like.
And I honestly did not think about school shootings while watching this, but what I did think about was Billy being worse than I ever remembered watching him. Like everything he says to Sydney is terrible. And then there's a scene where Sid and Tatum are sleeping in the same room, and Tatum's like, "Oh, I knew he had a flaw because he's just so perfect."
Yeah,
that's fucking perfect. Like, that's who is perfect. He is the worst.
Ryan.
Unfortunately, the man that will murder you is something that speaks to some women.
But again, going back to the ultimate message of the movie, she wins in the end. Like, this is what skeezy bad behavior ultimately gets them. The message of the movie is she reclaims her agency in a shitty relationship. And that is something I think that the movie celebrates.
And with the help of another woman, right? Like, they are at odds in the beginning, but really Courtney Cox has something for her the entire time, which is the truth about what really happened to her mom.
Yes.
And then in the end, she also comes in and saves her, and they are there like uplifting each other.
Sure. On one hand, she wins and another woman helps her. On the other hand, hey, if you're a straight woman, this is what you're gonna have to go through in the dating world.
And I mean, like,
this is due.
She survives, right?
Fair.
But now we know that there are like 6 movies or 7 movies after that. So it's like she survives to just do this over and over and over again.
The Fonz, a.k.a. Mr. Hembry, says, "Your entire thieving, whoring generation makes me sick."
Right.
This cast and these characters are something. Are we traversing through friend groups like Nightmare? Is this commentary? Is it a perfect time cancel? Is it overly dated, this group of friends?
My first thought is that they wanted as many suspects as possible, and they gave him that line. You know, as far as commentary goes, the casting of the Fonz as this person, and this is long before, Arrested Development or his it's pretty brilliant.
Or Barry.
Or Barry, sure. Yeah, Barry.
And what's so perfect about it is this movie. Again, I think it's hard to remember how much the first time you're watching it, you're like, I feel like everybody is the killer, and I don't know.
Right.
And then you keep deciding who it is. You decide it's Billy, then the movie kind of, quote, proves that it's not. But for the briefest 2 seconds, you're like, wait, is the principal doing this? And then he's murdered, like, as you're forming the thought, and you're like, oh, never mind. That would be weird anyway.
There was a point in the movie where I was thinking, hey, you guys have seen all the horror movies. You ever think it might be the janitor who looks just like Freddy Krueger?
Well, it's also interesting, too, that he's the only, is he the only adult that
basically
gets killed?
Yeah.
Right?
They
He's the
go after
principal adult.
Gail and Dewey, but as we said, they are not real adults.
They're
and
not
they kill
real
the mom
adults, and they're
before
not
the
killed.
movie.
And
They don't
Kenny.
actually kill the dad.
Was him?
Kenny was killed.
Yeah.
They killed Kenny.
They killed Kenny.
They
you
called
bastards!
that too. It's prescient.
We wouldn't know that for a couple of years, but that was a very good call on their part.
And not to
Billy-
dissect it, but was Himbry part of their plan, or was that like a added speed bump?
Yeah, and
There's
do we even know
They
for
didn't
sure?
need to kill him.
Yeah.
Do we know for sure that they did? I mean, it's a very big stretch, but if I were if anybody in the movie were probably gonna kill that guy, it would be the two kids that he's chewing out and traumatizing in the
Zack
office.
and Slater.
It seems like because the knife that's used is the same knife that the killers use,
Yeah.
but there's nobody at any point goes, this is exactly who killed Himbry. Like, there's no textual evidence about who it is.
The most realistic part about the movie is Jamie Kennedy. They call Jamie Kennedy just to let him know that the principal is dead for some reason.
Yeah.
And he lets everybody know he's shocked, and everybody's like, yeah, let's go see it, bro.
and then they almost drive over a cop. Like, what I like about horror movies, I hadn't seen many of them, but what I've come to realize watching them is that, like, it's not just that there's a killer and a victim. It's a lot of times the world goes increasingly mad, and they hear their principal's been butchered, and they run to go see it, and they almost drive over two people in, like, their excitement.
Billy says it's all a movie. It's all one great big movie. How does the meta nature of Scream hold up? And do the sequels lean into that too much?
Oh, wow. That's probably the worst line of the movie. That Billy line. That's probably like putting way too much of a lantern on not just the character, but the entire movie. But it's really hard for me to nitpick the meta, because like you brought up Kevin Smith before, and in his movie Clerks, he had two people talking about the construction workers on the Death Star.
Right.
So, that just wasn't in movies before. I think that this, sort of topped it, set the standard, and there's not a lot of holes here. Like, it feels natural, and it doesn't feel that forced. When somebody says never run up the stairs, and then Sydney immediately runs up the stairs, it's all natural, like it all just flows.
But we also see why she runs up the stairs, even though she makes fun of it, is because she goes and the door lock slows her down enough that she'll get stabbed, so it's actually safer to now run up the stairs.
Yeah. I think that the metatextualness was such an inspiration for why the script was initially created that, like, it's woven into, like, the basic, like, DNA of the story. And so it certainly didn't feel like over the top or too much to me, because it grows right out of the experience of the guy reading about this real life serial killer and then being super freaked out and calling a friend. And then they end up having conversations about scary movies. And then he has a scary dream. And so he writes the whole thing down afterwards. So it's like, I just think it's in there on such a basic level.
I think the challenge is the movie gets the franchise gets in its own way a little bit, and as a result of this seed that is planted here. And this is one of those movies where, I think you said it earlier, Mike, there's a universe where they stopped making movies, Scream movies, after this movie, and I think I might have been a happy audience member. Like, I don't know that I need the movie to lean so heavily in, and I think you could make a case that the metatextual winks and nods lead directly to Deadpool and Wolverine, where you have a movie that's so heavy on to breaking the fourth wall and winks and nods and
What'd you say, Ryan? What is this movie for people who read The Hollywood Reporter?
Yeah.
It's like all references to like Variety and stuff like that.
Definitely,
Like,
yeah.
let's look at a movie that dramatizes a corporation, a corporate merger.
And it's
right,
funny,
right.
It's funny you bring that movie up, Pete, because what I was going to say is that if Scream was directed by the Sean Levy of 1996, right? Like this, director for hire that I'll make a night at the museum, I'll make whatever. I think that it would have been such a blip on the radar. Like it just would not have worked. It's the combination of Williamson tweaking and Craven tweaking it back that makes it work. Otherwise, it just would have been like, there's a trope, there's a trope, there's a trope.
I do agree with the notion that sequels sometimes they kind of just like muddy the waters too much. I'll tell you the movie that really made me think that was E.T. When we watched E.T. for a couple seasons ago, I was so glad there was not a sequel because there's so much that you could explore in E.T. if you really wanted to. Like, what's their home planet like? But it's so much better to just always have to wonder that and not to have a movie where they go back to the home planet.
Why is that teacher forcing them to dissect frogs? Like, where's his move? I kind of want what I want for Scream in the future is sort of like what Alien and Evil Dead have become, which is like take a couple things from the previous movies and go do your thing.
Yeah.
But I think that what they created with this first movie is so
before you shoot the movie, take a couple tropes off.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll always look in the mirror and say, I don't need this trope.
You know what I want to see? Not another Scream movie. I want to see Stab. It's time for them to just make a movie called Stab and then not even reference it.
It's going to be directed by Sean Levy, though, Greg, so we're all fucked.
I thought that I rented Stab, but it was the movie Bats, and the title was hanging upside down, and it was Stab.
One of the horror movie rules is that you can't have sex. Does this have a different view of sex than other earlier horror movies we've covered?
Yeah, because she bangs and makes it, right? So, like... she's so worried.
Bada bing.
She's so worried that she has the mindset, the whore Madonna mindset, right? She can either be the whore, or she can be the virgin. And what she learns in this movie is like, no, it's okay. You can have a little sex. It doesn't mean that you're going to get stabbed to death. Maybe you'll be the one stabbing someone to death.
Also, I'm not totally sure that she didn't have sex with him just to see how what happened and to suss out if he was the killer. Like she's
afterwards, she says, "I'm still not sure."
Yeah.
And then she brushes her hair, which is so like now I'm young again. But I think that the most important.
Did she bring a brush or did she use Stu's mom's brush? Because that's nasty.
It's Stu's brush.
I think she used Stu's mom's brush.
But I think that the most important sexual part of this, though, is that when Billy's leaving her room towards the beginning of the movie, she says, "Would you settle for a PG-13 relationship?" Shows her boobs. He sees them. We don't.
We don't see them, no.
Which, whatever. And then as he's leaving, he says what he thinks is like kind of like a cool, coy line. "Oh, you're such a tease." And then the camera hangs on her to be like, that sucked. That was supposed to be like a big moment in our relationship, and that fucking hurt, bro.
I just showed you my boobs.
Yeah.
You say thank you.
He is so effectively such a big piece of shit. And then by the end of the movie, you're like, oh, that's because he's a psychopath. No, not really. He's a piece of shit because he's a dude in his culture.
He's a psychopath.
And he's a psychopath.
I would have loved, even if it doesn't fit into the world of this movie, for him to have entered a bed and then a bunch of blood just fly everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, that's what we needed for him.
Drew Barrymore's character makes Jiffy Pop. Is this a movie trope, or is the movie trying to say that Casey likes fucking disgusting shit corn that tastes like a burnt gremlin?
Oh,
damn,
man.
We're going in on Jiffy Pop. Eat a dick, Jiffy Pop. I have to say, great tension building device.
Yeah.
This woman is about to be absolutely butchered, and I'm like, you got to get that popcorn off the stove. And it's clearly starting to smoke. Why'd you walk right by it?
You know,
I think she goes by it twice and reaches for it and doesn't.
And then
touch
doesn't.
It. Yeah, it's awful.
The mom does it, even though at this point she's like hearing her daughter die, which is we'll put that in the sink.
It's like, first we got to get rid of the fire.
I'm 90% sure my daughter is dead, but I'm 99% sure that's going to burn, and I need to get it off the stove.
It's going to smell.
Our final speed run question. In the movie Wild Things, Neve Campbell makes out with Denise Richards. I'll take my question off air. When we come back, it's award season.
The 90s.
It's the saddest time of any podcast where we have to end. No, wait, it's the happiest time. We get to give out awards. We don't have to end yet.
And perhaps recommendations, Mike.
It's conflicted feelings. I'm not Ryan. I don't need that help. Thank you, though.
You know he forgot. You can see it in his eyes that he forgot.
You can't say shit in my eyes.
Also,
I have thick glasses.
Everybody from the movie Scream, we have 5 wonderful bowling trophies for you to come and pick up whenever you would like. These are the awards.
Let's kick it off with those tasty recs. Pete.
You know what? I'm gonna give you a callback. I'm gonna say go watch Popcorn, 1991.
Hell yeah!
This is gonna be. It's a bonkers movie, but it's the one that is going to give you that metatextual good feelings in the special tingly places.
The nads.
And it's a real movie, and I just have to make sure that I double down. For
I put
Mike.
a year on it, so it's obviously real.
Yeah.
I said parentheses 1991 close parentheses.
1991, directed by John Johnson.
John Craven. Kind of funny that his name's Wes Craven, and he makes scary movies.
Yeah, sometimes he should be less Craven.
Ryan, what is your recommendation other than that he should be less Craven?
I wanted to recommend my other favorite Scream, which is the movie and the book Tristram Shandy, but I have already recommended that according to Google Drive. Do you guys remember what episode I recommended that on for what movie?
You keep notes of these things?
Barry Lyndon.
I recommend
it's Barry Lyndon.
Oh, damn.
Mike, give yourself a point.
You know what? I think I do deserve a point.
I recommend the same 5 things over and over and over again. I didn't realize we were not supposed to do that.
I watched Scream and I recommend frozen yogurt. It's
should
so good. But no, I'm going to do a movie that I think Greg might have recommended, but I don't keep those records. So I'm going to say F is fake.
Yes!
Or
oh
F
my
for
God.
fake.
That's
or
such
F
a good
fake.
movie.
Oh, that's the special effects one, right? With the guy?
No, it's the art forgery one, right?
Yes.
Yeah, with Orson Welles.
Oh.
Orson Welles is so good in it.
A documentary, and I am using the biggest
Big shrug.
finger quotes
Yeah.
when I say documentary.
Perhaps.
I'm going to make this movie, but am I making every movie ever? Am I making every movie that's ever been made trash? Am I making every magician, artist, art forgeryist trash? Are they all just trash? Or do I love them? You'll never know. And I sort of like Wes Craven. Nobody respects the genre more. You could just say sentences like that. You don't have to.
Yeah, I love it. It's podcast.
Nobody loves the genre more, but nobody finds it more, comical or like maybe like commercial than Wes Craven at this point. And it reminded me of like he's just this big fat Orson Welles in the back of a bar going like, F is for fake. Check it out, guys.
And Greg, what of the 5 things you like would you like to recommend?
Part of why I think this movie is not super fun is it's based on an actual serial killer who was not friends with everybody. He was just raping and murdering people. But it made me think of a book I read, which I don't even know why I read it because I'm not this kind of person, but it's called I'll Be Gone in the Dark. And it was
so good.
About the
Did you see all the comedy fans know what you're talking about?
Yeah. It's Michelle McNamara's book. She was Patton Oswalt's, or she is Patton Oswalt's late wife.
Ex-wife.
Well, she's dead.
They're not married. So
yeah, okay. So ex-wife. And it is about the Golden State Killer. And the things that it reminded me of, one is just like how easy it was to get into everybody's house as the Golden State Killer. Like it just, and that's true of the guys of the killings that like inspired the movie. It's just like so easy to get into a modern house if you really want to. And the other thing is the using the phone to terrorize. Long after he had stopped killing people, he would still call up like their family members and mock them over the phone. This is like a major part of it. And then he sort of, over the course of the book, he manages to claim one final victim because Michelle McNamara gets so wrapped up in this that she like develops really bad habits, including mixing alcohol and sleeping pills, and then eventually, unfortunately, dies. And it's like sort of her obsession with this. And you see it consuming her, taking her life first in the form of like taking her from the things in her life that matter, and then finally like causing her to actually die. You get done with the book and you're like, why the fuck would I read this? Like, and it's got that same sort of like, we are drawn to these things that are so terrible for some reason. It's an amazing book. They fucking caught the guy, not because of this book, but because so many people do 23andMe that they were actually able to like DNA test and figure out who this guy was. He was, wait for it, an ex-cop. All right. So read I'll Be Gone in the Dark.
Greg, who is worse? This guy who killed a bunch of people, or Patton Oswalt who got married, according to some people, too soon after his wife died?
Because he found another woman that he loved who was great with his daughter. Yeah, those people can go straight to hell. If I die, I hope my wife is married 2 weeks later. Nobody has to like sit around.
Your murderer.
Yeah, and nobody has to sit around and mourn me and not get on with their lives. You can be like Sydney and be like, you know what, a year has passed. I ought to just move on.
What if? Okay, so your wife marries immediately, but then also she replaces you on this podcast immediately. Is that?
I literally don't care, dude. When I check out, you guys are free to do whatever you want, right? I'm going to be not existing. Like the best thing that anybody can get. I'm gonna have that, and you guys can just have like fun with reality.
He said it, Mike. So we are Weekend at Bernie's him to Miami immediately.
Dude, yeah. I'm like David Cross. Ride my corpse down a mountain. Like, seriously, like, donate me to people that want to sodomize corpses. That's totally fine. I don't give a shit, dude.
I know a guy.
I will be gone.
In the dark.
In the dark.
Mine is, I can't remember if I have before, but it feels perfect, is... So many want to be the torchbearers and nobody fully does it, but I truly enjoy 2/3 of Behind the Mask, the story of Leslie Vernon. 2/3 of that movie is so fun. And then they just drop their premise because they got lazy. But 2/3, great. So check it out. It's a mockumentary where a young film crew is following a guy who wants to be the next Freddy or Jason because in his world they are real, and so he's often doing cardio because he's like, these fucking kids are so fast.
Yeah.
And you have to get after them but look like you're walking. It is very silly. Let's get to our awards, starting with 90s slang. Pete.
I don't know. I went through this movie and I'm thinking to myself, what is really the slangiest slang? The one I landed on the most was when he called her Alicia, or called him Alicia. The as if Alicia Silverstone nod to that felt like principally 90s.
The Clueless reference. Shout out.
Yeah, the Clueless shout out. Yeah. It's the equivalent. It didn't catch on, but it's the equivalent of like Bye Felicia. And I don't know, I like Bye Felicia better, but
Bife Alicia? What does bife mean?
No, Bye
Ryan.
Felicia.
No, don't.
There's no need to derail.
Was that a troll?
He's
because
being
he has a 3-year-old.
Stew. He's saying he's Stu and you're Randy.
That's it. I just got played. God, I just got played.
Greg, what is your 90s slang?
Same neighborhood. I was going straight up with as if. Like the whole, like I feel like nobody before or since has ever delivered the as ifs as hard as like this like 4-year period around the 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't even know what it means, but they said it a lot.
As if that would happen, I think is what
Ryan?
they're saying there. It's elliptical.
In a 100-minute movie that is literally nonstop 90s slang, this movie came out 18 months after Clueless, and they say as if, okay, Alicia, this is the answer. So it is this.
The only other thing I could think would be the constant references to Sharon Stone.
Yeah, there's a lot.
I guess she was pretty big
That's
at the time.
Well, when you have a female killer, you have to reference only that female killer.
I'll give that one to Pete, but any of you would have gotten bonus points if any of you had said, okay, which only was in the 90s.
Not in my household.
What is your musical moment of Scream?
Okay. There's only one. There's some great musical moments because I think the score is actually quite good.
It is.
There's not enough of it. But there is a musical moment. It is, again, in Casey's house. I have kind of a fixation on the opening sequence, I guess, where she looks out on the patio and the music is building and it builds and builds. And suddenly they introduce some booms in the score. And Ghostface says, "Turn on the patio lights." Boom. Again. And I laugh out loud every time.
Pete. That's a good one. Ryan, what's yours?
I mentioned, is it Red Right Hand before?
Yeah.
About how that's the score of the city. But there's one point
hand.
where they get to the police station and like now we've been hearing the song throughout the entire movie. And Mike, correct me if I'm wrong. It's in all but one Scream movies.
Red Right Hand?
Yes. This is just
Yes.
This
Is that
the
true?
official Scream
It is
song.
in American Pie they have the and she only comes when she's on top song.
My bed
and all
is on
of them,
fire.
That Red Right Hand is that.
It's a cool
ludicrous.
song.
But
It is a cool song.
they pull up to, and it's just on all the time. Like there's speakers in the city and they just play it. But when they get to the
Like
police
Disneyland.
station, Dewey gets out of his car and now it is like tuned to the song where he shuts the door on the drum beat and he gets out in the cool way, but he's still Dewey. And that dichotomy of Nick Cave and Dewey is the musical moment of the movie.
I love that. Gregory?
There is a subtle, I feel, reference to Ghostbusters in this movie, and it's when Principal Fonz has just been killed, and you see Ghostface like in his eye, and the music goes bada 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 bada, just like the beginning of the Ghostbusters song. And I think that they're doing like a sound alike there.
I like it. I am going to give that one to Ryan.
Did you guys hear? I think I'm crazy, but did you guys hear the hint to John Carpenter? Like, there's a score where the bells in the background are going, ding 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 ding, ding 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 ding. And it's
I didn't
really
pick up
really
on it,
subtle.
Not surprised.
Totally buy that. Yeah.
Yeah.
This okay. Tell me fuck off if you don't want to do this, but unprepared meta moment. What is the most meta moment in this movie?
It's got to be when
the
Billy says that it's literally that they are literally in a movie.
It's a pretty good one.
I gotta say, it's probably the TV in the van and the 30-second delay.
Because do you know what he's saying? He's saying, Jamie, look behind you, Jamie.
Yeah.
The killer's behind you, Jamie, because he's talking to Jamie Lee Curtis.
But he's really saying
I didn't make that connection,
Jamie
though.
Kennedy.
And
That was
he's
great.
Jamie Kennedy. Ryan, what was your answer? Even though I clearly, with my enthusiasm, said.
Yeah.
Say that one.
I'm going to say that one that Mike just said.
Oh, shit!
That's my one. But if I had to pick a second one other than my first answer, which was word for word and with intonation what Mike said, it's the one time where I do think that Wes Craven sort of lost control of the movie, which is the janitor going, huh? Yeah, dressed as Freddy Krueger. Fred Krueger.
And
Fred.
that's literally Wes Craven, right?
That is Wes
Standing
Craven.
That is
there
Wes
wearing the-
Craven.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah, that's a good one.
cringiest moment, Ryan.
Oh,
I mentioned it before, and it's just something that I would not have noticed until I watched it at this age, which is Billy leaving with his line and saying, you're such a tease, which he is trying to be like playful, a little neggy, a little like, I just saw your boobs. Isn't that great? And then we just hang on her. And in every other horror movie, we would cut or we would go back to Billy and see what he's doing or go back to the killer in his lair. And we just hang on Sydney going from, I'm so happy I did that. I'm not. I'm sad. Like I'm around shitheads only. It was awful to watch.
Greg?
for me, it's got to be Principal Fonz, who I spend a lot of time thinking about, obviously. The cops have come to, like, talk to Sydney, and Principal Fonz is like, okay, ask your questions quick. I don't want you traumatizing her. And he looks down, and he grabs, like, her jaw and sort of turns her face to him. And it's like, Billy turns out to be a killer. And so all the ways in which he's a piece of shit, like, kind of, for me, get sort of, like, wrapped into that. This is the principal. Why are you touching your student like that? Why are you calling her sweetheart? I can't wait until you're dead, and I don't have to wait very long.
It's terrible that he died, but no girl will be touched like that at that school.
Yeah, there's a whole backstory there. I feel like there's a big thing going on there.
You know that Keanu Reeves ghost hand thing, where like every time he takes a picture with a woman, he like
touch a woman.
He doesn't like. That principle is the opposite of that, and those are high school students.
And no joke, fellas, don't touch women. Like, don't touch them on their back. Don't touch them on their shoulder.
Just their hair. Touch and smell their hair.
Touching women. You think you come up with the perfect pretext to walk up and touch a woman. They're just going to be like, oh, she's very supportive. My hand on her lower back. They fucking hate it so much. Stop touching them.
Lower back is not a great place to be supportive. I do appreciate the Dr. Seuss book you were about to start writing there, Greg.
Yeah.
Don't touch her.
Don't touch her on
Don't
the
touch
back.
her anywhere.
Don't touch her in the sack. Don't touch her on the
elbow.
hair. Don't touch her down there.
Don't touch her in a fight. Don't touch her on wedding night.
Jeez, I could have. I had both of those moments in my head. I think I'm going to go back into the bedroom, just a few moments before the cringy hold on Nev, where they both agree they have consent, to some over the clothes stuff, and he immediately goes for her leg and reaching up her nightgown. And the way the camera is just a lascivious monster following his hand on that cut is a cringy moment for me.
Those are all cringy. Greg got the bonus, same cringe as Mike. It makes no fucking sense. I get why the other ones happened.
Mike, earlier in the show, there was a moment where I referenced that, and we made eye contact, and I was like, I think we've got the same cringy moment.
And it was a meet cute.
Honestly, like we all know that the debate was the end of Biden, but like, wasn't the start of it like, why are you touching people like this? You know, like, don't touch people.
That's his. Yeah, he's got that creepy factor.
Stop touching people.
Pound for pound performance. Take two. Pound for pound performance, Pete.
Well, I think I'm gonna go for Lillard, which feels weird to say, but Skeet might be a little bit too deppy, and Lillard hangs it all out there, and I think he's really fun to watch in this movie. And when Skeet throws the phone at him at the end. Says, you hit me with a phone. Was legit, and it stayed in the movie. And that I love that. Like, I low key love that moment. So
I think
mom and dad are going to be so mad at me.
I think he also improv that line.
Yeah.
Oh, so good.
I mean, nothing will ever touch the liver line. Like, that's a fucking good joke. Like,
liver alone.
Like, and he keeps poking at his friends. Your friends love when you say a joke and then you poke at them until they laugh. But it's the improvised lines.
Yeah.
Is it my turn, Mike?
It's your turn, Ryan.
It's so hard to go with like who was the best, not just with each movie, but with the season of like, or who was the most time capsule. And Matthew Lillard is everything. He is everything that 1996 was. The fact that, like, Mike's story about how he got this job because he was just undeniable. You just have to put him in this movie because he just talks like Matthew Lillard. And then all of his little moments. I honestly flip-flopped back and forth a million times on this because I do think the ensemble, with all of its faults, is pretty great. But I'm going to go with Lillard too.
Yeah, I thought for sure, especially earlier, the way everyone's talking about Nev Campbell, that Nev Campbell is going to be the consensus choice. But mine is also Matthew Lillard. Matthew Lillard, who went on to have a huge career in the D&D scene. Very big participant in D&D, and part of why it has gotten so big over the last few years. He owns a company called Beetle and Bard, and he's on a lot of streams and everything. And he's very generous with his time in that way. The movie works or it doesn't work based on him. I think he gets the tone of it, and he has like 3 walk-off lines that, since Wes Craven has said like that he maybe even should be given like a writing credit, because the 3 like funniest lines in the whole movie are his improvisational lines. I think that like the movie might miss the tone if Matthew Lillard didn't encompass it perfectly. His performance at first seems too big, but the movie comes and finds it. And by the time you realize why he's acting that way, it's like all locked in, and it's very rewarding.
And he's a piece of shit in multiple ways. Like, one, he murdered people.
Yeah, that's wrong. We're against that.
Okay, so we're going to go out on that limb. But also, like, he doesn't know when to laugh. The day after a murder, Ghostface runs through the high school hallway, and everyone's like, that's wrong. And he is laughing his ass. He loves it so much because he's Matthew Lillard.
My favorite part of his performance is that he does not hide that he's the killer. When they're talking about gutting, that they're victims of like actually being gutted, he's like, it takes a man to do that.
Yeah. Because he knows like, I'm sore from last night.
Yeah, it was
his
tough.
masculinity surrounds him like an aura that actually knocks videotapes off of the cart. Like, his boundless energy in this movie is what earns him this coveted award.
If you read the script before before it's cast, and you think it's going to be Randy, right? Like, Randy's going to be the walk away part, and he just takes it. Like, sorry, Jamie Kennedy, but it happened in every other project you've ever been in. So,
yeah.
All right, our final award, Greg. We can start with you. Director's signature moment.
Okay, I don't know if I'm going to win this one, but the Dewey's job of the night of the party is to watch the party. As soon as he sees Courtney Cox, Gail Weathers, great name, he immediately is like, "Can we go on a walk?" And they walk away from the party. This is so Wes Craven, where it's not just that there's a killer, and it's not just that we don't know who it is. It's that people who are not even related to what's going on primarily in the movie are acting like in everybody's worst interest. Dewey is supposed to be like the guy in charge of protecting everybody, and he's so devoted to marrying Courtney Cox that's all that he can think about doing. Nothing that happens at the end of the movie works if Dewey's just posted up as a cop there. But it's his wandering away from the party when he knows he's not supposed to do that. Like, he knows what his job is, and he still does it, not because he's bad, not because he wants anybody to suffer, but just because he's so grossly incompetent.
If he had stayed there at some point, he would have gone for his gun, but it's an ice cream cone, and then licked his gun and blown himself away. So
if the ice cream goes down there,
so is his taser.
Yeah. An underrated line from this movie is when they're walking, and I think that Courtney Cox is falling in love with him.
Yeah.
Which, like, is that like not Gail Weathers and Courtney Cox is falling in love with the character and the person? She says, "My name is Gail Weathers. I might as well be a meteorologist." That is her real name, and she became a journalist and not a meteorologist. What the Okay, that's unrealistic.
Ryan, what is your director's signature?
My director's signature is when it's the first attempt on Sydney's life where I'm not sure what the plan is here. I don't know, like, if the whole thing continues or what happens if they actually kill Sydney the first time. But it's when she is adept at tripping people and realizing that these are actually just humans and not like have any skills whatsoever, except for the fact that they're holding a knife. This is when she goes upstairs, and the camera work on this and making sure that we always know where we are, she is, and he or they are, is something that he, like, that's something that we talk about with, like, oh, did you direct Sicario? Now we know where the action scenes. Wes Craven does not get enough credit for, like, being able to do that.
Pete?
Very similar reasons, different sequence, and actually it's down to a single shot. After Casey is running across the yard, she has been completely disabled. She can't scream. She can't breathe. She is still running, and we have a shot on the giant porch, and we see mom and dad crossing the porch, going into the house, and blurred out in bokeh in the background is Casey reaching up and screaming, trying to scream for mom and dad. And that is, to me, signature intensity, signature tension from Craven, knowing that this whole thing will be resolved in seconds and that the parents are just too late. His ability to stage, block, and edit these things to just a hair's breadth from being completely irrational and taking me out of the movie is extraordinary. I found that wildly intense, that first sequence.
Plus, we have to remember that the first time you saw it, you were like, Drew Barrymore gonna survive.
Yeah. What are they gonna do? Yeah, she's the biggest head on the poster.
And the other thing too is that you might have had a nightmare that looks like Freddy. You might have had a nightmare that looks like Ghostface. Like, these are all potential nightmares, but everyone, and like, the first time I saw this was like Dr. Zhivago, I think, but it's been done in so many movies and it's always effective. The nightmare that everybody has is I want to scream, but I can't.
Yeah.
But I can't. Yes.
And the movie is called Scream, so you'd think you'd be able to scream.
Yeah. And the other piece of this is every single one of these killings in terms of Craven's understanding of what makes us scared, they are a violation of the sanctity of our personal space. Right.
Yeah.
They're in our own homes. They're in our school. Like, they're everywhere that we count as safe. He breaks that. And I think that's
and they
a part of it.
They externalize literally our internal organs, right? Like, they they like show our insides in a way that like is like, you know,
Great.
But I mean, that's totally it too, because every horror movie again learns the wrong lessons, because they will show your high school boyfriend in a chair completely ripped apart. I'm not scared of that. Like, it's cool to watch. Thank you. But what I'm scared of is reaching for mommy and daddy and not being able to.
Yeah.
That's
and not being able to.
Or that, like what Pete said, which is like they almost see her. It's like such a near thing. And when you read like I'll Be Gone in the Dark, or when you read about the killings that actually inspired this, you are struck again and again by how close people were to getting away, or if only someone had woken up at that point and then left. Or like I'll Be Gone in the Dark, there's so many times where you're like, people hear something and don't react to it. And if they just had, maybe it would have saved them. So it's all that like near
Always
what if
react.
stuff. Always react. Always overreact. That's what I say.
Ah! Well, I thought you were going to kill me. Jesus.
There we go.
I was
All right. Those are our awards. Taste buds, it's time to announce who my best friend is and who will be delivering me blueberry muffins every single morning. Pete.
Congratulations, Pete.
Thank you so much for joining. You got 41 points.
Okay. I think I bested my score from last time.
That's all that matters. You know what? You're ultimately really only competing with yourself.
And
Thank
on the
you,
last
Craig.
episode, you got 0. So
That's true. You've gotten 0 so many times. You just keep not showing up.
But Andy got shot in the face that one time. So.
Yeah.
also, my fucking puffy nipples are pierced as shit. So let us not forget.
Ryan.
Yeah.
You got 43 points.
Ugh.
Thank you so much for being here. Greg.
Yeah,
you got
there
40
it is.
points. You did come in bronze. Ryan, you are the winner.
Oh, my God.
That was a Wes Craven level twist right there, Mike. Congratulations.
I'm not going to let you know which way I'm going to
Didn't
go.
feel good.
I didn't feel
Incredible.
good doing it, though. Look at Greg's
Yeah.
face. It makes me feel bad.
It's all scrunched up with displeasure.
To see Greg happy
Yeah.
for 3 hours of this recording only to end in this phase makes it worth it. Makes it worth it. I have so many people to thank.
I stayed up till almost 10 for this.
Well, you're all winners in my heart, but mostly Ryan. Thank you all. Pete, before we get out of here, plug your shit, my friend.
Just because we did Scream, I'm gonna plug a podcast that I do with some other entertaining and well-educated gentlemen on horror movies. The podcast is called Sitting in the Dark, and every week it's part of the Next Reel family of film podcasts, and we get together and we talk about a collection of movies that represent a theme. So we talk about what makes home invasion movies scary, or what makes underwater movies scary, and we kind of pull those apart. And
It's the water.
It's generally the water. It's always the water, and only sometimes the tentacles.
It's got to be pressure for me. That's too much pressure. I don't want to be down there.
Yeah, there's that too. So Sitting in the Dark, we have a great time. It's a fairly new show. We've only been doing it for about a year, and we love doing it. And also, totally unrelated to anything, but because I'm on a bit of a media tour, I wrote a book with and it's an ADHD book. If you have ADHD and you're an adult and you are struggling with planning, we wrote this book, and it's a damn good book, and it's called Unapologetically ADHD, and it came out on Tuesday of this very week.
Oh, wow,
and you should go
Pete.
check it out.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Thank you too.
But the next
our
time you come to
publisher.
the show, we will have read your book. If we had known, we would have read it ahead of time for sure.
And what an incredible target audience to say, hey, read this book. That's
I know it's terrible, but I've done like 40 podcasts this week pitching this book. I don't know how not to talk about it.
No,
Ryan.
man. Well, I'm excited to read it.
We will if we remember. Is that okay? Is that an okay to
Totally
joke to
okay.
make?
Totally okay. It's the right audience for that, for sure.
Well, thank you again, Pete. Lovely to have you back. Maybe we'll say something violent about you that your co-host can bring up next time he's on. I don't remember saying we'll shoot Andy in the face, but
well.
All I know is I
Pete,
beat
your
Andy
show
with
was
all the
Terminator
names.
last season, right?
Yep.
And Andy's was does anybody remember?
Less than that.
oh,
Yeah.
Electric Boogaloo.
Electric
Okay,
Boogaloo.
So yeah,
Yeah.
Obviously, we're
But
gonna
you
keep
know what
Pete.
he's doing this time, right? He's coming back. You know what he's doing.
What is he doing?
Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Hell yes.
Yeah.
The sexy
Like-
Disney movie for pervs.
Yeah.
Hell
It's a
yeah.
one where-
pervert movie.
You know, the one where the priest gets horny in the fireplace?
Hell
He
yeah.
might win.
He
Doesn't.
sings a whole song about being down
Yeah.
so bad.
Having just watched Scream and having never watched Hunchback, he's going to get shot in the face. Andy's going to get shot in the face again.
Well, thank
That-
you guys. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Pete. And you know what? I don't know if I say it enough. Thank you, Greg, and thank you, Ryan.
Oh, stop it.
That's nice.
Thank you, Mike.
Hey, thank you,
This has
Pete.
been our Scream episode.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Greg.
Ryan.
Thank you. Hey,
Thank you,
Mike,
Greg.
good show.
Thanks, Pete.
Thank you. We're not done yet. We're still recording. Next week, we are coming back with Mars Attacks. Until then, keep watching those movies.